The night air around Florence never truly sleeps. It sighs through the cypress groves, ripples along the Arno, and slips between the Renaissance facades with a hush that feels like secrets brushing against stone. Listen closely, because what you are about to hear is a real story, one whispered across wine-stained tavern tables, shivered through police archives, and threaded into the nightmares of anyone who has ever parked beneath a moonlit olive tree with someone they love. The locals call him Il Mostro di Firenze, the Monster of Florence, yet the monster has no single face. It is a shifting mask of rumor and blood, of broken promises and botched arrests, of cultish symbols etched in candle-smoked basements, of innocent men devoured by suspicion while the true predator vanished through the mist. From 1968 to 1985, the city of Botticelli and Michelangelo became a chiaroscuro crime scene, lovers' lanes transforming into open-air tombs, each bullet a crude painter's stroke of fear. Picture the glow of July dusk in 1982, fireflies blinking like dying embers, cicadas humming their electrical dirge, a young couple, hearts swollen with summer, park on the rural outskirts in a Fiat that still smells of cheap cologne and almond pastries. Windows fog, laughter tickles the dark, then a sharp crack splits the night in two. By dawn, the hillside is cordoned off with police tape that flutters like tattered ribbon on a birthday gift from hell. The monster has struck again, and Florence tightens its shutters in collective dread. Even author Thomas Harris will eventually stalk these same roads with a notebook, sniffing for the scent of pure human evil to season the cannibal thoughts of Hannibal Lecter. This is not merely a chronicle of deaths. It is a pilgrimage into obsession, detectives driven to madness, journalists chasing red herrings, forensic pathologists dissecting both flesh and community trust, and families who still leave porch lights burning for justice that never crosses the threshold. It is European galo flamboyance, gilded with cold, procedural despair, scarlet gloves wiping down a .2 to Beretta, opera records spinning behind locked doors, and leather-bound grimoires promising power in exchange for blood. 8 chapters await you, each steeped in equal parts moonlit romance and arterial spray. Take my hand, breathe slowly, and step over the evidence markers. The story begins now. Chapter 1. Lovers beneath cypress skies. The hills south of Florence. Smell of fennel and dust in August. The kind of parched fragrance that sticks to sweaty palms and makes even gasoline fumes seem herbal. On a lonely country road outside Signa, an Alfa Romeo idles beneath a writhing canopy of branches, its chrome bumper glinting like a predator's tooth. Inside, Antonio Lobianco runs a nervous finger along the steering wheel, while Barbara Loci hums a pop tune out of sync with the radio. Their affair is a fragile secret. Barbara still wears a husband's surname, and Antonio dreams of American movie stardom that will never arrive. But tonight, the cypress silhouettes offer cover, and reckless passion feels worth every risk. A breeze rattles dry leaves, and something unseen scurries across the gravel. Barbara pauses mid-home, sensing a presence. Antonio leans toward her, the leather seat creaking. He's about to laugh off her skittish stare when a shape looms. Outside the fogged window, an outline tall and unsettlingly still. The door handle rattles. Before he can speak, the window explodes inwards with a metallic cough-bang, and shards of safety glass settle like icy confetti over their skin. Antonio's chest jerks, and wet warmth soaks his white shirt. Barbara screams a raw, feral note that echoes through the orchard, then another shot snaps her spine of courage. She tumbles into Antonio's lap as crimson freckles the dashboard. Footsteps crunch away, deliberate yet unhurried. Darkness floods the car. Somewhere nearby a nightingale trills. Indifferent. Morning brings flustered police officers in ill-matched uniforms. They sketch chalk outlines while a newly assigned detective named Inspector Silvia Morini crouches in the dust, eyes narrowed. She notes the cluster pattern of bullets, a military background, a hunter turned voyeur. Barbara's handbag is missing, but Antonio's wallet lies untouched. Silvia whispers to herself, tasting the first metallic note of obsession on her tongue. Across town, local newspapers howl out headlines: couple slain on country road, monster among us. And grocery store talk shifts from olive harvests to autopsies. School children dare one another to visit the crime scene at dusk, while bar patrons memorize the bullet trajectory over glasses of Chianti. Florence has always loved its drama porahouses, marble statues, political assassinations dating back centuries. But this feels different. This feels like a curse awakened. Weeks drift by, yet Silvia cannot shake the case. She pores over autopsy photos in her dim apartment, the overhead bulb flickering with insect persistence. Gunshot wounds, close-range small caliber. She prints maps, sticking pins at coordinates of earlier unsolved double homicides. The 1968 shooting of a couple on the banks of the river Muknan. The 1974 killings near Borgo San Lorenzo, a pattern forming like constellations only she can decipher. Bile rises when her superior suggests it's merely a jealous husband or roaming drifter. She sees a design more intricate, as if Florence itself were being carved by invisible scalpel strokes. Meanwhile, the city adjusts its heartbeat. Lovers avoid secluded lanes, choosing crowded piazzas where violins echo off frescoed ceilings. Carabinieri prowl orchard roads, flashlight beams cutting through underbrush. Yet, beneath the surface, an older fear stirs ancestral superstitions, telling of demons that haunt passionate souls. Whispered rumors thicken. Animal sacrifices found in woodland shrines, black candles burned down to puddles of wax, pagan sigils scrawled on barn doors in ochre blood. Some townsfolk point to the Etruscan necropolises that dot the Tuscan hills like fossilized nightmares, claiming ancient unrest has finally answered centuries-old prayers for fresh life to devour. Silvia scoffs at occult gossip, but she logs every tip. One rainy afternoon, an anonymous envelope arrives at police headquarters. Inside, a single sheet of coarse parchment, smeared with what looks disturbingly like coagulated blood. The message, in shaky penmanship, reads, "The moon will drink. Again. Lovers are its chalice." No fingerprints, no postmark. Silvia locks the parchment in her desk and feels the first crack in her pragmatism. Autumn barrels in, cold enough to turn olive leaves silver. Harvest festivals still carry on, but laughter sounds brittle. In a crumbling farmhouse outside San Custodian, an elderly widow, Signora Rivalli, swears she saw hooded figures performing a midnight ritual beneath a lightning-blasted oak. She leads officers to scorched earth circles and melted wax effigies. Photographs leak to the press, and headlines pivot from serial killer to satanic cult. Churches fill with restless worshippers. Priests bless automobiles. Fear is no longer private tit, spreads communal, like plague, yet the monster remains a ghost. Silvia's leads trickle, morale sags, and the investigative team fractures under political pressure. An ambitious magistrate, Pietro Fabre, orders the arrest of Stefano Mille Barbara Loci's estranged husband, citing jealousy as motive. Newspapers cheer, a scapegoat sits in a cell, but evidence is thin, and Silvia's gut screams wrong. She visits Mille in prison, studies his trembling hands, his broken Tuscan dialect. He is no marksman. She concludes no phantom roaming cypress groves with predatory patience. She leaves the cell block feeling the system's gears grinding brittle. Teeth. Winter delivers silence, and for a fleeting moment Florence exhales. Lovers dare to kiss beneath falling snow in Piazza della Signoria. Silvia wraps herself in wool and allows brief respitapora tickets. Hot chocolate at Kefk, Kiliet. Her nights are still punctured by dreams of shattered glass and bullets whistling like angry wasps. She wakes drenched in sweat, convinced the monster is only pausing, sharpening his appetite on their complacency. The inevitable return occurs on a humid June night in 1981. A young couple, German tourists this time, parks their Volkswagen camper near Scandici. Soft guitar strums slip from the open door while they share a bottle of Brunello. When dawn bleeds across the vineyards, farmers find them what remains. Precision gunshots, identical caliber, the woman's purse missing, a surgical excision grotesquely performed on her body, hinting at ritualistic trophies. The killer is evolving, growing bolder, perhaps leaving signatures for those clever enough to decode. Silvia stands at the new crime scene, raincoat soaked in dew. She bites her lip until she tastes copper, eyes scanning the tree line for a phantom in black gloves. Reporters swarm like hungry gulls, flashbulbs snapping. One journalist, Marco Venturi, corners her for comment. He smells of stale cigarettes and ambition. Silvia offers nothing, but their eyes lock in silent acknowledgement. The city has slipped from psychological dread to full-blown hysteria, and every misstep could doom them all. That evening, Marco publishes a front-page expose hinting at a secret cabal rooted in Renaissance occultism, quoting unnamed sources about goat skull altars and arcane manuscripts bound in human skin. Circulation skyrockets. Tourist numbers plummet. Florentine officials denounce the article, but damage spreads faster than denial. Parents keep children indoors. Couples date exclusively at daylight cafes. Taxi radios crackle with conspiracy, chatter devil worshippers, foreign assassins, political cover-ups. Truth melts into rumor until facts feel like fragile relics unearthed from mire. Silvia's investigation enters a fever pitch. She reopens dusty boxes of evidence dating back to 1968, cross-retrieving ballistic reports, witness sketches, and forensic lab notes scribbled in obsolete terminology. A pattern crystallizes all. Victims are couples in cars on remote roads. The weapon is a .22 caliber Beretta, rare but traceable. The killer steals purses yet leaves wallets targeting feminine tokens, maybe trophies of fertility. The ritual mutilations begin only after 1981, as if a new pathology overrode simple slaughter. She proposes a theory of escalating psychosexual compulsion, but her superiors dismiss it as Freudian fantasy. Undeterred, Silvia seeks alliances outside official channels. She meets Professor Lorenzo Valenti, a criminologist famed for dissecting the Zodiac case. Over espressos in a cluttered study, they pore over crime scene photos, comparing the monster's bullet groupings to ancient Strega folklore about moondrinkers who feed on passion's spark. Silvia dislikes superstition, but values pattern recognition. Lorenzo posits the killer could be staging the occult theatrics to misdirect investigators a grand mezzanine to blur psychological signatures. Their nocturnal strategy sessions forge a tenuous camaraderie to scholars of darkness, dancing around each other's shadows. Lorenzo's bookshelves groan under titles like Blood Rites of the Etruscans and Medici Murders, Alchemy and Power. Each spine feels like 100 open doors to madness, and Silvia wonders if studying monsters makes one monstrous by osmosis. Yet she presses on, driven by the faces of the San Antonio's hopeful grin. Barbara's half-formed lullaby, nameless tourist dreams interrupted forever, as summer collapses into autumn. A thick file labeled suspects rests on Silvia's desk. Within, photographs, polygraph summaries, psychiatric evaluations. One image arrests her: the angled jaw and intense eyes of Pietro Pacciani, a farmer once convicted of rape, now living near many of the crime scenes. Rumor has pegged him as brutish, volatile, a man who slaughters pigs with unsettling glee. The magistrate loves the optics an uncouth peasant. Scapegoat to appease the bourgeois dread and issues a warrant. Silvia's got knots. She agrees Pacciani fits pieces, access to firearms, misogynistic history. Yet something feels staged, like a puppet dangled in footlights, while the puppeteer remains backstage. She attends the raid on Pacini's property, mud sucking at her boots. Inside a ramshackle barn, they uncover faded pornography, a rusted revolver, not the right caliber, and a locked trunk containing animal bones arranged in crude patterns. Reporters salivate. Headlines declare victory. Monster of Florence caught. The city erupts in cautious celebration. Postcards once again advertise sunset strolls. But beneath the applause, Silvia feels the earth tilting. Forensic ballistics do not match. The .22 Beretta remains missing, and the monster's letters yes. More envelopes arrive, each taunting the police with poetic sadism reference details only the true killer could know. Pacciani cannot account for them. During interrogation, he sputters confusion, defiance, filth, but never slips into the eloquent menace of the letters. Silvia starts to suspect a larger conspiracy, perhaps involving several men, perhaps an underworld of rituals and vendettas that uses simpleton scapegoats to shield its baroque depravity. The chapter closes on a bitter winter dusk. Silvia drives, alone, through the orchard road where Antonio and Barbara died years earlier. Snow flurries drift like torn lace. She parks, engine ticking. In the silence, she hears heartbeats of past lovers, feels the weight of 25 shattered lives pressing against the windshield. Somewhere in the dark, a branch snaps. She stiffens, hand reaching for her service pistol. Another shadow shifts. No gunshots, only a mortgage-paying deer escaping into deeper gloom, but adrenaline surges, reminding her how thin the membrane between life and obituary can be. She whispers a vow into the steering wheel. I will find you, even if I must carve your name onto every stone in Toscana. The wind slips through cracked window sills, carrying distant church bells and perhaps, if one listens hard enough, a faint chuckle that might be the monster or might simply be Tuscany, laughing at those who think they can cage its ancient terrors. Chapter TWO Witching Hour in San Castiano. The first true chill of October settles over Tuscany like a damp velvet curtain, muting the vineyards and hollowing the hills with premature dusk. In the stone villages south of Florence, shutters clap shut before the street lamps even flicker to life, and the usual accordion of evening chatter folds inward. Neighbors who once traded gossip over iron railings now avoid locking eyes, as if fear itself could be contagious. Beneath that trembling hush, the Monster of Florence writes his next movement, sharpening menace against the whetstone of superstition. Mornings begin to taste of smoke and chestnuts, yet an acrid note of anxiety spoils the seasonal sweetness. A farmer named Vittorio Mancini swears he heard chanting 2 nights in a row, distant and dissonant, seeping from the abandoned Ormini quarry near San Castiano. He shares this tale with the village priest, who dutifully sprinkles holy water on his weather-cracked hands before suggesting more prayers and fewer late-night walks. Vittorio boards up his barn windows nonetheless and ties iron scissors over the doorway to ward off evil, a custom older than the Medici line. At police headquarters, Inspector Silvia Morini studies a corkboard webbed with photos and twine. Newspaper clippings flutter like trapped moths under the desk fan. Satanic symbols found in olive grove. New victims identified. Suspect released after ballistics error. Each headline feels like a blow struck at her credibility. Yet she refuses to retreat. Her eyes trace the crimson yarn linking crime scenes, burial mounds, and rumored coven sites, trying to anticipate the killer's next footfall. She senses a shape coalescing in negative space, the way a sculptor knows a statue lives inside marble. Journalist Marco Venturi drifts into her office uninvited, the brim of his rain-dappled fedora casting shadows over mischievous eyes. He carries a dossier bulging with photographs and marginalia that drip with sensational promise. Silvia considers dismissing him, but there is a desperation in his manner that mirrors her own. They trade information in careful increments, bargaining like black market surgeons swapping organs. Marco produces a grainy Polaroid, allegedly smuggled from a secret masquerade, In the Florentine hills, hooded figures holding votive candles, their faces masked with papier, MCH beasts. Silvia notes the watermark of the photography studio. The image is likely staged, yet the fear it breeds is authentic. While bureaucrats gloat over farmer Pietro Pacini's arrest, tragedy returns with a ferocity that silences the victory parade. On the brittle night of All Saints' Day, a Peugeot is discovered at dawn on a muddy track near Baccaiano. Inside lie the bodies of an engaged couple, French art students, who had come to sketch Tuscan sunsets and sample wild boar rag. The crime scene is almost theatrical. The familiar .22 caliber bullets, the missing purse, the precise post-mortem mutilation on the woman's body. Most chilling is the single white chrysanthemum placed on the dashboard, its petals unnaturally unblemished by the bloodbath around it. Silvia kneels beside the flower, inhaling its bitter scent. In funeral tradition, chrysanthemums are offerings for the dead, but here it feels like a calling card. She looks up to find Marco leaning against a cypress trunk, scribbling notes and trying not to gag. He gestures toward the flower with his pen and whispers, "Someone is signing his masterpiece." For a moment they share an electric solidarity. Two moths circling the same perilous flame. Press conferences erupt in a frenzy of accusation and backpedal. Officials cannot reconcile Pacini's incarceration with fresh evidence that clearly requires a free hand. They double down, releasing statements suggesting a copycat, but the public sees through the ruse. Graffiti appears overnight on city walls. Il Mastro, cammina ancora. The monster still walks. Trust cracks open like old plaster, revealing the rot beneath. That week, Silvia conducts clandestine interviews with Pacini's neighbors. They describe him as brutish, but predictable. A man who belches his threats in daylight rather than slithering through midnight olive groves. One elderly woman, Signora Bellini, recounts hearing pig squeals at strange hours, yet insists the squeals were real pigs, not metaphors. She confides a rumor of two shadow men in well-tailored coats visiting Pacini before the farmer's arrest, speaking in polished Italian that sounded foreign to rural ears. Silvia files the testimony under potential accomplices, a folder fattening by the day. Meanwhile, an investigative magistrate named Paola Rustici joins the task force, bringing sharp intellect and an eye for procedural detail. She and Silvia find an academic rhythm. One dissects legal loopholes, while the other stitches forensic patterns, twin surgeons operating on the cancerous mass of rumor. Yet Paola faces political landmines, pressured by superiors to keep Pacini in irons regardless of mounting contradictions. She confides to Silvia during a midnight coffee run that the case is too valuable a trophy for certain careers to release. Silvia recognizes the bleak calculus of institutional ego and feels her resolve warp into something harder. In secret, Silvia and Marco take a moonlit drive to the Ormini Quarria, the site of Vittorio Mancini's whispered chanting. The road is ribboned with potholes, and cypress branches claw at the windshield like skeletal hands. They park, kill the headlights, and shuffle through undergrowth, thick with spider silk. At the quarry's mouth, they find melted black candles, chicken bones arranged in concentric circles, and a singed scrap of parchment bearing a crudely inked sigil. A crescent moon devouring a heart. Marco snaps flash photos that ignite the dark like silent lightning. Suddenly, a brittle twig cracks behind them. Silvia wheels around, firearm drawn, pulse pounding like a timpani. The underbrush parts to reveal empty errantly, a whip of cold wind carrying the scent of sulfur and damp limestone. Yet both feel the residue of being watched, a prickling on the skin that lingers long after they retreat to the safety of the car. On the drive back to Florence, Marco breaks the hush to ask, "Do you ever worry the monster is less a man and more a movement?" Silvia considers the question, then answers, "Movements still have architects." The next morning, Silvia submits a requisition for further analysis of the chrysanthemum from the Peugeot scene. The lab isolates specks of rare volcanic ash clinging to the stemma, compositional match to soil found exclusively in the hills near Monte Morello. She hears the news while standing before a mural of Dante's Inferno inside the police building, the irony not lost on her. The Florentine infernal landscape is beginning to map itself with scientific precision. Armed with the soil report, Silvia plans a covert surveillance operation across 2 nights around Monte Morello, recruiting only the most trusted officers. They deploy thermal imaging cameras and conceal themselves among rocky outcrops where nightingales lament. On the first night, nothing but foxes and the distant glow of Florence's skyline. On the second, well past witching hour, the thermal monitor flickers with the silhouette of a tall figure carrying what appears to be a long case-up, shape suspiciously reminiscent of a rifle bag. Silvia's heart slams against her ribs as she motions her team to advance in a silent pincer. They close the distance, but a sudden flare of static blinds the thermal screen. Someone has jammed their frequency. By the time vision recalibrates, the shape is gone, leaving behind a burial mound of freshly turned earth, the size of a wine barrel. The team excavates frantically, expecting a body. Instead, they uncover a sealed metal box. Inside, preserved in layers of wax paper, lie women's purses, 7 of them each, missing since the first murders. Atop the grisly collection rests a folded note, Archivio della Luna, you are late. Silvia feels her knees threaten collapse beneath the weight of that taunt. The purses are trophy enough to implicate the real monster, but the note suggests an organized archive, perhaps a vault of atrocities, curated by more than one curator. She sends the objects to forensics and burns through the remainder of the night, pounding espresso and cross-checking each purse with police records. The discovery proves Picciani's innocence yet again, but also exposes the killer's acute awareness of police actions. Someone within their ranks is bleeding intel, trusty roads from the inside. Officers eye one another in corridors, conversations cut short at Silvia's approach. Even Paola Rustici begins receiving anonymous threats screwed. Sketches of scales of justice snapping under anvils, delivered in envelopes dusted with fine ash. Marco publishes a blistering front-page spread titled, Inside the Belly of the Beast, outlining police incompetence while shielding Silvia's cooperative role under the alias source, S. She berates him for the betrayal, yet cannot deny the resulting public uproar forces higher-ups to reopen investigative angles previously dismissed. Against this swirl of turmoil, a new character descends upon Florence, American crime novelist Thomas Harris. Rumor says he seeks inspiration for a cannibalistic genius named Hannibal Lecter. Harris arrives with polite southern manners, but his beige trench coat hides an appetite for darkness, rivaling any detective. He requests interviews with everyone involved, from detectives to coroners, to local wine merchants who claim to have glimpsed demonic rites. Silvia reluctantly agrees to a single meeting at a riverside cafe. They speak for hours, Harris absorbing details with predatory.com, while the river glistens like liquid mercury behind him, as the Arno reflects moonlight that evening. Harris leans across his espresso and murmurs, patterns are like fingerprints of the psyche. Your monster shows compulsions that might predate these murders, perhaps rehearsals of violence tucked into everyday life. Silvia bristles, yet notes his outsider clarity. She wonders what the author sees in her eye's obsession, fatigue, or perhaps the mirror of his own storytelling hunger. When the meeting ends, Harris touches her arm gently and adds, do not let them trade your truth for their convenient fiction. Winter advances again, pushing fog down the valleys, until every olive grove resembles a sunken shipyard. Despite heightened patrols and citizen watch programs, the monster claims 2 more lives on a frosty December night near Vicchio. This time the victims are middle-aged locals, visiting lovers who believed age granted invisibility. The murder, weapon, position of the bodies, removal of personal effects, every flourish is textbook monster. But in added atrocity shocks, even seasoned pathologists. The man's left hand is severed and missing entirely. Silvia stares at the amputation site. Under morgue fluorescence, the flesh ragged but purposeful. The killer wanted the hand as another trophy or message. She imagines it bobbing in a jar of formalin somewhere, guarded like a saint's relic. The thought thickens her blood with fury. She files a request for cross-border alerts, suspecting the trophies might be sold on an occult black market that stretches beyond Italy's borders. Customs officials scoff. Superstition rarely registers in bureaucratic spreadsheets. Christmas lights appear in city squares, but the bulbs feel sinister, casting shadows sharp enough to slice. Carolers shorten their routes, and midnight masses swell with penitents bargaining for safety in hymns. From the pulpit of Santa Croce, a cardinal delivers a sermon condemning the devil's harvest lurking in Florence. Yet his eyes hunt the pews as though the monster might be disguised in the congregation. Silvia attends the mass in plain clothes, hoping to feel communal strength. But the incense only makes her nauseous. The new year arrives without fanfare. Just another set of digits on documents that now seem pointless. Silvia meets Marco beneath the Ponte Vecchio, where jewelers sweep snow from shuttered displays. They trade updates. Forensic labs pinpoint the purse's wax layers as a blend of candles manufactured in a single workshop outside Siena, one that once produced ritual supplies for amateur esoteric societies. Marco hands Silvia a tattered pamphlet he found in a flea market, Confraternita della Luna Assassina, Statutes and Practices. The pamphlet, printed in the 70s, outlines archaic rites involving the harvesting of lovers' life force through death at lunar apex. It reads like sensational trash, yet details align hauntingly with crime scene specifics. Silvia drives straight to Siena's outskirts and interviews the aging candlemaker, Giacomo Ricci. He is frail, eyes cataract clouded, but memory sharp as frostbite. He recalls a man ordering boxes of wax engraved with crescent heart sigils, a man who paid in crisp banknotes and spoke with a metropolitan accent. Ricci never knew his name, but remembers a distinct birthmark, a wine-colored stain like a teardrop beneath the left ear. Silvia's pulse races. She sifts through suspect photos, narrowing candidates until two remain, both civil servants with unassailable alibis for each murder night. She realizes grimly that alibis can be crafted as artfully as corpses. Returning to Florence, Silvia finds her office ransacked, files scattered like feathers from a gutted bird. Someone searched for something, perhaps the witness tapes, perhaps the soil analysis. In the chaos, she spots a single item stolen, the parchment note that once read, "The moon will drink again." Whoever took it is removing breadcrumbs that lead back to the source. Exhaustion claws at her, yet fury holds her upright. She schedules a clandestine meeting with Paola and Marco in the Spartan backroom of a shuttered bakery, ovens cold and cobwebbed. They devise an unsanctioned sting, lure the monster through the one appetite that remains predictable, the lunar calendar. The next full moon, 12 days away, aligns with Valentine's night, a blood-red symbolic opportunity tempting for a narcissistic killer to ignore. They enlist a pair of undercover officers to pose as lovers in a borrowed convertible along a notorious lover's lane near Tavanel. Silvia positions her best marksmen in camouflaged nests, cross-connected by secure radio. The night arrives, wrapped in argent moonlight, frost painting the windshield edges like lace. Hearts pound in every earbud. Hours pass. Cicadas. Then silence. Toward 3 o'clock, a figure emerges through the olive rows. Tall, gloved, the barrel of a rifle, glinting. Silvia gives the signal. Floodlights explode, sirens wail, but the figure is already sprinting, impossibly swift. Tires screech. Officers give chase. A shot rings out, not from police, ricocheting off a stone retaining wall. In the confusion, the monster, if it truly was him, vanishes into the labyrinth of terraces. They find only boot prints ending abruptly at a collapsed irrigation tunnel that leads nowhere. Inside the tunnel mouth lies a single object, the missing, severed hand, nailed to a wooden plaque carved with the words, Cari, Investigatori, Boon Not. Dear investigators, good night. The sting collapses into scandal. Media deride it as a grotesque spectacle, a circus of incompetence. The public's fragile hope shatters anew, and a wave of protests erupts outside police headquarters. Silvia becomes the face of failure, despite her objections to earlier procedural missteps. Paula is reassigned to a bureaucratic post in Sicily, effectively exiled. Marco publishes an expose naming corrupted officers suspected of feeding intel to the monster, prompting defamation suits that threaten to bankrupt the newspaper. The monster's reach extends like a fungal network. Feeding off division, Silvia packs her apartment in silence, one rain-slicked dawn, convinced she will be suspended. Next, she tucks case files into a battered suitcase, planning to continue as a private crusader if she must. Just before locking the door, an envelope slides beneath it. Inside is a Polaroid of Silvia standing at the Valentine's sting site, circled in red pen. On the back, scrawled in elegant cursive, Archivio della Luna adds many faces. Yours glows brightest. She sinks to the floor, reading the words again and again. The monster sees her not merely as pursuer, but as potential addition to his ark of a living artifact, to be extinguished and catalogued. She feels the chill of an invisible collar snapping shut around her throat. Yet beneath that terror blooms a fierce defiance. If he wants her in his collection, he will have to risk exposure at a level even his occult veil cannot shield. Silvia rises, exhales slowly, and slips the Polaroid into an inner jacket pocket near her heart, letting its sharp corner press into her ribs as a reminder. She reopens her suitcase, lays out photographs, maps, and autopsy notes across the floor. A new pattern glimmers in the overlap one she missed amid bureaucratic debris. Streetlight glow bathes the paper mosaic in amber. The monster's ritual sites form not a random scatter, but a spiral tightening toward an epicenter. A decommissioned villa, once owned by an eccentric noble family now lost to tax seizures. Her eyes ignite with purpose. The spiral ends 30 kilometers south, at a place locals call Villa dell'Ombre, Villa of Shadows. Legends claim its underground cistern once stored wine in. During wartime, corpses' official records list it as abandoned. Silvia smiles for the first time in months, though. The expression feels carved in granite. If the monster keeps an archive, Villa dell'Ombre could be its vault. The chapter closes in the hush before dawn, as glacial moonlight drains from the sky. Silvia marches toward a destiny lined with wolfish smiles and flickering candles, toward corridors where every stone might echo with screams preserved in dust. She has no backup, no official sanction, but she has conviction forged in sleepless nights and stained autopsy photos. Above the city, cathedral bells toll the hour, and pigeons scatter in a startled cloud, her only witnesses as she steps into the mouth of darkness, determined to drag the monster into the unforgiving light. Chapter 3. Vault of Glass Hearts. Mist grips the valley of grief like a damp fist, muffling dawn into a gray smear that erases horizon lines and blurs every cypress into the next. The road to Villa dell'Ombre curves through that formless haze as though drawn by a trembling hand, each bend coiling deeper into a geography the tourist maps politely ignore. If Florence is a masterpiece painted in gold, these hills are its forgotten underlayer brushstrokes of iron and shadow that never meet the sun. Inspector Silvia Morini drives with headlights extinguished, trusting memory and instinct more than the electric glow that could announce her arrival. Every crunch of tire on gravel sounds too loud, as if the stones themselves might scurry off to warn the monster of her approach. She parks beneath an archway eaten by ivy, engine ticking like an anxious metronome. Villa dell'Ombre looms ahead, 3 stories of cracked limestone, mottled with lichen, the color of old bruises. All the windows are black cavities, but one on the 2nd floor glimmers with a faint red pulse too dim for modern filament, too steady for candlelight. Silvia shoulders her worn leather satchel, feeling the reassuring weight of evidence bags, a handheld video recorder, extra ammunition. Beneath her jacket, the Polaroid of herself circled in the monster's red ink presses against her ribs, like a smoldering coal. She vowed to drag the beast into light. Now the promise pulls her forward. Inside, the foyer smells of mildew and funeral lilies left to rot. Moon-pale dust blankets everything, except the footprints that snake toward a grand stairwell. They are fresh, edges crisp, leading not upward but downward beneath the stairs, where a servant's tunnel once carried barrels of Chianti to underground cellars. Silvia clicks on a flashlight fitted with a tissue-thin red filter, muting its beam to the glow of dying embers. She descends, spiral steps slick with condensation, each tread exhaling the chill of stone lungs buried centuries ago. The cellar opens into a vault larger than she imagined, its ceiling buttressed by arches thick as ancient oaks. In the center stands a wrought iron cage the size of a horse stall. Inside the cage, hovering on custom pedestals, rest 13 glass display boxes, each underlit by crimson bulbs wired to a humming generator. Within every box lies a single relic, a faded purse strap, a hospital bracelet adorned with heart doodles, a silver locket stained brown at the clasp. Trophies beating hearts turned to jewelry for an exhibition no visitor should ever behold. Silvia's own heart thrashes at her ribs as she recognizes the purses taken from the Monte Morello cache. The monster's archive is real, curated like the macabre wing of a museum. She raises the video recorder, documenting each artifact, zooming in on the placards handwritten in looping calligraphy. Barbara Loci, 1968. Helga Rush, 1981. Coralie, Gates 1984. The names bite like wasps, condensed biographies of joy, snuffed in an instant. A soft whir slithers through the vault. On the far wall, thick velvet curtains, part of their own accord, revealing a two-way mirror that had looked like plain masonry seconds before. Silvia freezes. Behind the glass swirls a deeper darkness that feels sentient, watching her with lidless fascination. An amplifier clicks alive, and a honeyed voice spills into the room, smooth as opera, threaded with cyanide. "Welcome, Inspector." Archivists rarely receive visits from the living. Silvia swings her flashlight toward the sound, but the glass only reflects her own silhouette, small weapon raised, breath fogging into ghostly blooms. She steadies her voice. "Show yourself." "I already have," the voice replies, tinged with a scholar's amusement. "You are gazing at the collective face of desire, meticulously preserved for posterity. Look closer." Her beam lands on herself again, and she realizes the mirror behind the glass is angled to multiply her reflection, fracturing it into infinite silhouettes. The archivist wants her to see she is part of the exhibit now, that the trap has cords tied to her every limb. Panic claws at reason, but she inhales through her nose, letting the smell of damp stone ground her. She knows terror is the monster's favorite seasoning. "I will end this exhibit," she murmurs, stepping closer to study the glass foreseams. Hollow wall, concealed door. The reflection shows no exit, but along the mirror's edge she notices smudges, oily thumbprints shaped like crescent moons devouring hearts. The symbol from the quarry candles. She records them. The voice returns softer. "Do you recall the Etruscan myth of Vanth? She who guides souls to the beyond. Your city worships angels carved in marble. We cultivate the escort of endings." Silvia holsters her flashlight, draws chalk from her satchel, and marks the print's positions on the stone. "Escort this," she says, firing a single round at the mirror. Glass spiderwebs outward, but does not shatter through. Bulletproof. Instead, lights within the display cases flare, bathing the vault in frantic red that renders everything arteries and sinews. An alarm drone seeps from unseen speakers, low but urgent, like a subterranean heartbeat. From the stairwell behind her, steps echo methodical, in sync with the drone. Silvia retreats to the cage for cover. Figures emerge from the shadows, wearing half-masks shaped like the Roman god Janus, one face smiling, the other melting into a skull. Black robes swirl over leather boots that gleam with maintenance, not antiquity. Modern cultists wearing history like couture, she counts for each, carries a weapon. 2 with knives curved like sickle moons, 1 with a compact submachine gun, 1 unarmed save for manic certainty in his gait. The leader, likely the voice, strides forward, mask trimmed in gold leaf. He speaks with reverence. Inspector Morini, archivists must practice conservation. You are here at the moment. An artifact becomes most valuable when belief still pulses in its veins. Silvia raises her pistol, centering the leader's chest. Turn the generator off, unlock the cage, and drop every weapon. You can still live to stand trial. The leader chuckles. Trial is for the living. We celebrate release. He gestures, and the cultist with the submachine gun rattles a warning. Burst that stitches the stone floor near her feet. Shards bite her shins. She fires back, a controlled pair that snaps the gunman's shoulder. He screams, weapon clattering into darkness. Chaos detonates. Knifemen leap over toppled artifacts, blades flashing. Silvia dives, rolls behind a pedestal. A glass box shatters above her, raining glittering shards and the scent of aged perfume. She fires again, tags one knifeman in the thigh. He collapses. The second swings downward, blade grazing her forearm, drawing a line of fire along the skin. Adrenaline drowns pain. She slams pistol butt into his jaw, crunch of bone. He drops. Only the leader remains, withdrawing a slender stiletto etched with the crescent heart. He circles the cage's perimeter, gaze steady through Janus masks. The archive must feed, he says, breath misting in the frigid air, and the moon demands the rare vintage of pursuer blood. Silvia snarls through clenched teeth. The moon can starve. She feints left, kicks open the generator housing, and rips the fuel line. Spark meets volatile fumes. Blue flame blossoms, severing darkness with incandescent fury. The leader staggers back as his stage dissolves into roaring chaos. Sprinklers dormant for decades sputter to life, pelting the vault with oily water that hisses against fire but also smears the floor into a treacherous sheen. Silvia lurches toward the stairwell, boots skidding. Behind her, the leader howls, voice finally stripped of cultured calm. Run, Inspector. We will curate the legend of your flight. She doesn't glance back. Survival is forward. Steps blur under stomping feet, smoke ghosting around columns. Halfway up, fresh gunfire erupts from above her, conspirators blocking escape. She veers onto a secondary corridor mapped in old blueprints she memorized. Passage walls bulged with damp. She charges toward a ventilation shaft, shoulder ramming. The rust snagged grate, until it breaks free, with a scream of metal. Air tastes of rot and ozone, but also possibility. She hauls herself through the ductwork, using elbows and knees, pistol clutched. Echoes behind her, cultists chasing, metal screaming as they clamber. The tunnel forks. She chooses upward slope. Minutes contort into centuries. She emerges into a servant's pantry on the villa's ground floor, disheveled but alive. Outside the windowless room, footsteps scour marble halls. She peeks through keyhole slats to masked figures, sweep the corridor with flashlights, radios, crackling in guttural code. She notes the channel frequency police issue. Inside, men of law enforcement are compromised, feeding the cult. Her suspicion that insiders bled intel is vindicated, bitter as quinine. She retreats into pantry gloom, scanning for weapons. Shelves offer only tarnished silverware and mouse-gnawed linen, but on a butcher hook hangs an ornate cleaver, blade, thick with decades of rust. She tests its heft, awkward, but serviceable. When the corridor guards pause near the door, Silvia hinges it open and hurls the cleaver end over end. It embeds in the first guard's clavicle. He collapses, gagging, red. Before the second reacts, she lunges, slams him against oak paneling, muzzle pressing beneath his mask. Who runs this? She hisses, names, ranks. The guard wheezes, archivist, chosen from the order. He sneers blood through his teeth. You can cut one head, we grow two. She knots fingers in his collar. Give me a root, not a branch. He utters 2 syllables to Deo. Greco then headbutts her, breaking his own nose to free himself. He sprints, but she fires, bullet burying in his spine. He tumbles. The name repeats in her mind like war drums. Taddeo Greco. She knows a tan undersecretary in the Ministry of Culture, who often appeared on panel discussions about art repatriation, publicly polished, privately murderous. Sirens rise outside blue. Strobe splashes across cracked stained glass. Marco Venturi refused to abandon her mission. He must have followed GPS pings from Silvia's phone and called reinforcements. Tires crunch, gravel, dogs bark. Silvia exhales jagged relief, then realizes backup may include moles inside police ranks. She must differentiate friend from fanatic. She races toward the main vestibule. Smoke coils from cellar vents into hallways. Fire alarms bleat. Uniformed officers flood through the entrance, led by Captain Cesare Bianchi, a veteran Silvia trusts. She waves arms, shouting, hostiles in cult robes, some disguised as police. Bianchi nods, orders his men to check ID badges and remove masks on sight. Gunfire echoes behind them, cultists resisting capture. Silvia descends once more toward the cellar, Bianchi covering her flank. Flames lick ceiling beams. Conscious bodies of wounded cultists sprawl amid shattered displays. The leader is nowhere. They kick through charred debris until Bianchi spots a secret door jarred open behind the bulletproof Mira and escape tunnel. Silvia follows into a stone corridor that corkscrews for 40 meters before disgorging onto a vineyard slope bathed in siren light. Tracks and Frost head toward a waiting Land Rover now, fishtailing down a dirt road. Driver's mask flashing in. TAILLIGHTS. Silvia raises her pistol. Range too great. She memorizes the plate numbers anyway. Snapshots of letters amid mud spray. Then the tires spin. Rover fishtails Bianchi's sharpshooter kneels, squeezes trigger. The rear window blossoms into fragments. Vehicle lurches, engine coughs. But driver regains control and vanishes behind swaying cypress. Exhaust clouds drift away, leaving only the distant wail of ambulances and the groan of burning beams. Silvia stands shaking, smoke-smeared blood ribboning from her forearm and shin. Bianchi presses gauze pads into her wounds, while paramedics swarm past. He whispers, "You did it. You cracked the hive." Silvia stares at flames gutting the villa. "No," she answers softly. "We found only a wing. The Queen just flew south." Hours later, hospital fluorescents buzz overhead as doctors stitch her arm. Marco arrives, eyes rimmed red from smoke and worry. He lays a small item on her bedside table, the Janus mask from the guard she killed, half smile, half skull. "Souvenir," he says. "Also, our newsroom contacted sources Taddeo Greco left for Rome last night. Diplomatic plates, no flight. Manifest. State business, they say." He spits the phrase like rotten olives. Silvia grips the mask, feeling its cold edges bite palm creases. "We have purses, wounded cultists, ballistic matches to every murder. Enough evidence to topple Greco. Alliances." She pauses, voice a cracked whisper. "If they don't bury it again." Marco leans close. "My press shield is thin, but public hysteria is a sword. We release everything. Photos of the vault, footage you shot, names we can confirm. With that momentum, Even Rome must prosecute. Silvia closes her eyes, hearing again the archivist's velvet threat. We grow two heads. She pictures Hydra myths, how each severed neck sprouts another until cauterized by fire. The vil of fire might cauterize one head, yet the body remains. She opens her eyes, pupils gold in antiseptic glare. Then we burn it all, she murmurs. But with truth, not gasoline. Over the next 2 weeks, Florence convulses beneath revelations. Marco's newspaper prints a front-page spread titled The Vault of Glass Hearts. Splashing photos of the purses, the bulletproof mirror, the Janus masks. International outlets syndicate the story. Citizens flood streets in candlelit marches for the victims. Pope Benedict issues a statement denouncing the diabolical perversion of sacred love. Parliament opens inquiries into occult infiltration of state offices. Yet, amid the uproar, Silvia notes troubling patterns. Key cultists found hanged in their cells. Autopsies ruled suicides. Evidence boxes misfiled. Technicians transferred. Invisible hands still puppet strings. Still bandaged, she travels to Rome, under discreet escort. Determined to confront Taddeo Greco, she carries arrest warrants signed by magistrate. Paola Rustecarin stated amid public pressure, but Rustigi's voice on the phone sounded wary. Information leaks suggest Greco's diplomatic immunity may obscure his culpability. Silvia tightens grip on her satchel. Justice etched in ink can be erased in corridors of marble. At the Ministry of Culture's palatial headquarters, she meets a wall of aides insisting Greco is abroad. Yet she spots a familiar teardrop birthmark peeking above the collar of a man stepping from a service elevator. Greco, he glances back, eyes widening a fraction when he recognizes her. For one heartbeat they freeze like predators caught in mutual scope. Then he strides away into a private corridor labeled archives. Silvia pursues, pistol concealed beneath coat, heart hammering. The corridor ends in a rotunda lined with ancient, statuary stone gods who watched empires fall. Greco stands at its center, Janus mask dangling from fingers, expression calm as water lilies. "Inspector?" he says, voice cultured, the same she heard through cellar speakers. "Art is memory. Murder merely restores the primal pigment." She levels the gun. "Hands where I can see them." He raises both slowly, almost reverently, masked, dangling like a plucked flower. "Kill me, and you martyr the order. Arrest me, and you entertain them." We calculated both outcomes. She stares into his eyes, pools of serene conviction, beyond insanity. She recalls advice from Thomas Harris. Patterns are fingerprints of the psyche. Greco's pattern is performance. Deprive him the stage and the act unravels. She lowers the gun a centimeter. "I'll do neither," she says. "I'll discredit you, strip your titles, expose bank transfers, trace bullet casings to your gun. You will wither under sunlight, remembered not as Vance's acolyte, but as a pedestrian accountant of corpses. No legend, just ledger entries." A flicker trembles in his irisphere. No calculation. He smiles thinly. Sunlight is brief. Archives are forever. In one fluid motion, he flips a hidden latch on the mask. A fine powder bursts into the air, silver motes, catching chandelier light. Silvia instinctively steps back, holding breath, eyes squinted. Greco inhales deep, sighs, and drops to his knees. Foam whitens at his lips as he collapses. Cyanide. He stares upward with pupils contracting to pinpoints, whispering, "Archivio completo." Then silence. Security guards roar into the rotunda, guns raised. Too late. Silvia waves them back, fanning powder with her coat until hazy cloud settles. She kneels, checks Greco's pulse, gone in death. His mask's smiling half cradles his cheek like a lover's palm. The state will spin this as lone madman's suicide, she knows. Yet she also possesses enough tangible evidence purses wounded cultists, now Greco's own confessional, artifacts to prevent total burial. She will fight red tape with headlines, speak on televised panels, ensure every victim's name echoes through courts and cathedrals. But late at night, when screens dim and applause fades, she will remember the way Greco's certainty never faltered, as if he truly believed the archive outlives law. Weeks pass. Trials commence against surviving cultists. Sentences vary, appeals swarm, but momentum remains. The monster murders cease. No new bullets carve lovers' lungs. Florence begins to exhale for the first time in 17 years. Couples tentatively return to hillside vistas, though some keep headlights on and windows cracked, listening for a sound that once defined dread. Silvia attends each memorial, leaving white chrysanthemums now, reclaimed from the monster as symbols of remembrance rather than calling cards. She places one at Antonio and Barbara's grave, whispering, "It's over." Yet the bloom trembles in the breeze, and she wonders if anything that dark ever truly ends. One rainy evening, she meets Marco on Ponte Santa Trinita. The Arno churns below, slate gray. He hands her an advance copy of his forthcoming book vault of glass hearts, inside the Monster of Florence. The dedication reads, "To Silvia Morini, who faced the darkness so we could see the dawn." She flushes, half pride, half unease. Storytelling, she knows, is another form of archiving. They stroll until lanterns flicker on, casting coin-like halos across the cobblestones. Marco asks if she will finally rest. She gazes toward the hills where Villa del Hombre smolders in. Reconstruction scaffolds government plans to convert it into a memorial museum. She answers, "Rest is a myth," Florence tells tourists. We keep watch. Later that night, alone in her apartment, Silvia opens her closet to retrieve the Janus mask she kept evidence that should have been logged, but which she could not relinquish. She intends to lock it in a safe. Instead, she finds an envelope propped against it. No stamp, no seal. Inside, a single Polaroid, the burnt husk of Villa del Hombre, reflected in an unbroken mirror. Across the bottom margin, elegant cursive, "Archives do not die. They migrate, luna nascenti, rising moon." Silvia's breath catches. Her mind flashes back to Greco's last words. Archive complete, complete but not ended. Perhaps he was merely a curator in a lineage that outlived him. She closes her eyes, listening beyond city hum for the rustle of wings in darkness, wondering which new hills might cradle the next vault of glass hearts. She pockets the photo, realizing the hunt has paused, not concluded. The Monster of Florence may have lost its primary face, but the shadows still own countless masks ready to slip onto new custodians. She straightens her shoulders, feeling scar tissue tug at stitches on her arm, a reminder she survived round 1. The moon outside the window is a thin, keen crescent, exactly like the sigil that haunted her, and it hangs over Florence with unsettling promise. She whispers into the quiet apartment, not a prayer, but a warning. "I am still here." The crescent moon glints off the Janus mask, and for an instant it seems to smile. Chapter 4: Eclipse of the Archivists. Ink-black clouds shoulder their way across the February sky, yet the moon slips between them with a sly brilliance, a silver coin flipping through sooty fingers. Florence has not seen rain in weeks, leaving the Arno low and listless, but the air crackles with a storm of another sort. After the revelations at Villa del Hombre, headlines declared victory, politicians claimed credit, and grieving families lit prayer candles that burned all the way down to their metal stubs. But victory tastes strange on Silvia Morini's tongue, like wine corked with something bitter. Each night, she walks her apartment in restless orbits, hearing the echo of that final message. Archives do not die. They migrate. She keeps the Janus mask locked inside a steel strongbox under her bed. Yet, its phantom grin lurks in her dreams, Every time she closes her eyes, she is back inside the glass vault, hands trembling as she filmed artifacts no one should ever have to label. Candlelit purses, heart charms crusted with oxidized blood, a chrysanthemum wilting on a bullet-pocked dashboard. She wakes with sweat painting her spine, convinced she heard the scrape of claws against stone, or perhaps just footsteps on the roof. She has replaced her apartment door with a reinforced slab of wrought iron, but peace is a myth in a city that once sheltered the monster. By day, she drowns herself in paperwork, building the legal labyrinth prosecutors will need when the cultists go to trial. But one by one the defendants rot into suspicious comas, victims of cardiac events in high-security hospitals. The official line is stress. The unofficial murmur is poison delivered by loyal hands. Magistrate Paula Rustici faxes Silvia a chart of the casualties for in 10 days, each death annotated with a question mark and the phrase moonset window. The timing is too neat. Every so-called heart attack occurs in the hour before dawn when lunar light fades. Medical staff recall a chemical temps in the air, the scent of almonds. Cyanide once more, with every felled witness. The prosecution's spine crumbles, and Silvia's fury grows new bones of its own. She turns to Marco Venturi, whose book is now a bestseller, for leverage. They meet in a dim trattoria, lined with dusty wine bottles. He looks older, the bags beneath his eyes, bruised from sleepless tours on talk shows. Fame weighs on him like wet wool. Silvia leans over the checkered tablecloth and whispers, "We need to go international. If the order has cells abroad, they've already scattered their leadership like dandelion seeds." Marco sips his espresso and grimaces. "My publisher has an American connection, maybe a feature in Time or Der Spiegel. Global outrage could stop the silencing campaign." He reaches into his satchel and slides over a manila folder. Inside are newspaper clippings from Germany, Greece, and Brazil. Unsolved double homicides. Always lovers, always point to 2-caliber bullets. The pattern rises off the pages like cigarette smoke. Silvia flips through a clipping from Rhodes. 1998. Honeymooners found in a rental car. The bride's purse missing. The word Celine redeemed scrawled on the windshield in her lipstick. Another article from Hamburg. 2003. A couple on the banks of the Elbe. Post-mortem mutilation, identical to the monster's late 80s victims. She feels the same chill that rolled off the villa's crypt walls. An Arctic breeze traveling across continents. Marco lowers his voice. Interpol filed these under probable domestic violence or isolated psychosexual homicides. The signatures were dismissed as coincidence. But the purse theft, the caliber, the lunar dates look at the timestamps. Each crime shadowed a significant lunar event: supermoon, eclipse, perigeicity. Silvia thinks of the phrase, lunanis, rising moon, and the pieces begin aligning like gears in an antique clock. Thomas Harris resurfaces in Florence for a television special about the monster myth and invites Silvia to the quiet courtyard of the Biblioteca Nazionale. They sit under bare plane trees, branches clawing at the sky. Harris listens while she describes the foreign cases, his fingers steepled under his chin. After a moment of contemplative silence, he says, "You're describing a ritual diaspora. The ritual is the seed. Every new soil cultivates a different flower, but the bloom is unmistakable." He suggests consulting archival material at the Accademia di San Luca in Rome, records of excommunicated societies from the Renaissance period with connections to astrology and anatomical studies. Silvia and Marco drive to Rome the next morning. In a battered Alfa Romeo borrowed from the newsroom, the windshield peppered with bug corpses like sepia constellations. The highway unspools beneath them, and with every kilometer Silvia's determination knots tighter. She palms the Janus mask in her lap, tracing its edges beneath a cloth. Marco watches the traffic blur past. "Sometimes I wonder if publishing was a mistake made me part of the story." She answers, "It made you a witness, and witnesses keep tyrants in check." The Academia archivist an elderly woman named Sister Beatrice, ushers them into a climate-controlled vault, scented faintly of vellum and sandalwood. She produces a folio of treatises, stamped with the sigil of a crescent moon, biting a heart. The Latin commentary references something called Conventus Luna, the moon's assembly founded in 1453 by nobles expelled for necromancy. The treatises detail the harvest of amorous force, through paired sacrifices under celestial alignment to ensure longevity of lineages. Each rite required the removal of personal tokens and, disturbingly, the preservation of a witness, vessels so that memory itself could be stored. Memory preserved like organs in formaldehyde. Sister Beatrice's voice quavers as she reads aloud, perhaps shaken that Florence's modern horror is rooted in manuscript ink. Silvia photographs every page, adding them to a case file fattening like a plague rat. Among the treatises is a ledger listing Medici patronage to an eccentric alchemist named Taddeo Aretina, an ancestor, perhaps, to Taddeo Greco. The ledger references an observatory built beneath Siena's city walls, abandoned after plague swept through its acolytes. The phrase Archivio della Luna appears again, signed by Aretino's curt flourish. They depart Rome in waning light. News crackles over the car radio. An American couple found dead near Lake Trasimeno. Umbria gunshot wounds. Car windows shattered. Purses missing. Police suspect robbery. Silvia grips the steering wheel until her knuckles whiten, realizing the order has accelerated its cadence, as if racing some cosmic deadline. She guns the engine, chasing the sunset dot at the Trasimeno crime scene. Local officers fumble amid gawkers and television crews. Silvia flashes her credentials and steps into the cordoned area, boots sinking into sandy shoreline. The victims' bodies have been removed, but blood darkens pebbles like rust. She crouches at the shattered window of their rental Fiat. A single shard remains intact enough to reflect moonlight. Then there, etched by bullet gouge, is the sigil she despises. She collects the shard with latex-gloved care, and wonders if the moon etches its own graffiti on glass hearts, or if that is only what madmen see. A forensic tech whispers to her that a small metal tin was recovered under the passenger seat. Inside, a chrysanthemum pressed between Bible pages. Silvia sucks in a breath. The text bookmarked is Ecclesiastes. There is a time to kill and a time to heal. The message is obvious. The killers believe they are physicians of fate. The next day brings frenetic strategy sessions. Paola Rustici convenes a multi-agency team at the Guardia di Finanza headquarters in Rome. Representatives from Interpol, Europol, and the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit sit around a polished mahogany table, their suits crisp, their eyes bloodshot. Silvia presents her evidence, the treatises, the diaspora killings, the lunar correlations. She finishes with a satellite map of upcoming astrological phenomena. Total lunar eclipse slated for March 14th, barely 3 weeks away, visible across southern Europe. She taps the screen. They will strike on eclipse night, and it will be large. The pattern is escalation. The room buzzes with uneasy throat clearing. An Interpol official raises a brow. You're suggesting a mass murder timed to an eclipse. That's cinematic, Inspector. She responds flatly. So were the vaults in Florence. The official DEFLATES, an FBI profiler named Dr. Lena Barrett, proposes setting bait using social media geofencing, target couples checking in at romantic hotspots around the eclipse corridor Tuscany, Umbria, Lazio, provide quiet security details for those couples, hoping to intercept an attempted kill. Silvia hates the idea of using real people as bait, but they must anticipate the order's appetite. She nods reluctantly, and the room sets to work. Operation Selene Shield mobilizes 120 officers, dozens of unmarked cars, and a network of drones fitted with infrared lenses. Marco embeds with a small unit near the old Siena Observatory, convinced the order will return to ancestral soil. He carries a press badge but also a sidearm, a gift from Silvia, over espresso thick enough to stand a spoon. "Only aim if you must," she warned. He responded, "I'll trade bullets for truth, any day." Silvia's team sets up command in an olive mill overlooking a valley outside Montepulciano. Eclipse night approaches, and with it, tension coils tight enough to snap. She has not slept more than 2 hours in days, yet adrenaline keeps her brain sharp as a scalpel. Through binoculars, she surveys winding lanes, bathed in lantern glow, where tourists sip vino nobile. Casual romance has returned, unaware it is being stalked. The moon begins its slow devour by Earth's shadow just after 9 p.m., turning a sullen copper. Radio chatter intensifies, units relaying couple positions, drone feeds, thermal patterns. Minutes crawl. At 9:47, near Pinza, Unit 3 reports headlights extinguishing on a deserted farm track. A couple steps from their rental car to view the blood moon. Drone footage shows a second heat signature moving through wheat stubble, tall, deliberate. Silvia barks orders. 3 intercept cars roar down gravel. Before they arrive, gunfire rips the stillness. 3 shots, sharp as whip cracks. Drone feed shudders as a projectile destroys its lens. Radio howls with static. In the command van, screens blur into pixelated chaos. Silvia slams a fist on the console and sprints for her jeep, heart battering ribs. The farm lies under the red hush of full eclipse. She screeches to a halt, leaps out, Glock raised. The couple lies on the ground, alive but injured, shrapnel lacerations from ricochet, not direct hits. The gunman is gone, officers fanned into the fields. Silvia kneels, pressing gauze to the woman's shoulder, breath ragged. The woman gasps. Mask. He wore 2 faces. Elsewhere, Marco's unit at the Siena Observatory reports movement. Drone infrared reveals multiple heat signatures converging on the ruin. 6, maybe 8. Silvia leaves the couple to EMTs and barrels north. Tires spitting gravel. The observatory squats atop a hill like a skull stripped of skin. The shattered dome gaping at the eclipse-stained sky. Marco meets Silvia behind a toppled column, camera dangling at his chest like a second heart. Gunfire crackles inside. They exchange a glance, battle-born trust and push into the throat of the ruin. The interior smells of guano and cordite. Moonlight slants through dome fissures, painting blood-warm stripes on broken tiles. Cultists weave between crumbling equipment, weapons drawn. They seem disorganized, panicked that the ambush at Pinza failed. Silvia counts 3, but instincts warn more lurk. She signals Marco to stay low. A cultist rushes across their line of sight, cape flaring. Silvia fires, catching his calf. He staggers. She disarms him. Another emerges, knife glinting, but Marco clubs him with the camera, plastic cracking. An aria of violence rises, raw and discordant. When the smoke clears, 2 cultists are down, another pinned in rubble, whimpering. But there is no archivist leader, no master conductor. Silvia trains her gun on the captured man's temple. "Where is the curator?" she demands. He spits blood, hisses. The curators are legion. Marco tugs Silvia's sleeve, pointing toward an iron trapdoor at the observatory's center, half concealed under debris. They pry it open. A ladder descends into a vaulted tunnel lined with rusting copper cables. Their flashlights reveal footprints in dust. Fresh bait descend. The tunnel extends for 50 meters, ending at a subterranean chamber lit by crimson bulbs, powered by portable generators. At its center stands a cylinder of reinforced glass containing something that makes Silvia's skin contract. A bouquet of purses, bracelets, and jewelry suspended in gelatin, forming a grotesque mobile. A freshly severed human hand, still twitching, crowns the macabre arrangement. Beside the cylinder stands a woman in a charcoal suit, hair-bound in a severe Benitali's Deputy Minister of Antiquities, Eleonora di. Silvia recognizes her from televised cultural programs. Eleonora. adjusts silk gloves, eyes cold. Inspector Morini, arresting me will collapse your department's budget. I sign the checks. The purses glint under the red light like trapped souls. Sylvia steps forward, gun unwavering. I'll trade budgets for lives. Eleonora tilts her head, admiration lacing contempt. You misunderstand. We do not kill for sport. We curate for continuity. Love dies so that memory thrives. Without memory, humanity drifts. Marco raises his battered camera. Memory isn't property, it's experience, and you've stolen it. Eleonora smiles faintly. Experience fades. Archives endure. She reaches for a pendant at her throat, a capsule. Silvia fires before the capsule can be cracked. Bullet punches through sternum, exit wound spraying the cylinder. Eleonora staggers, blood mingling with suspended jewelry, then collapses. At that moment, the chamber's ceiling rumbles. Charges wired to columns detonate, triggered by capsule. Dust rains. Silvia grabs Marco's arm, hauling him toward the tunnel. They scramble up the ladder as stone slabs scream behind them. The observatory floor heaves. They burst topside into moonlit wreckage, just as the ruin implodes inward, a beast swallowing its organs. Silvia and Marco hurl themselves behind a wall fragment. Debris pelts the hillside. When the thunder subsides, the observatory is a smoking crater. Officers rush in, floodlights slicing haze. The eclipse ends. The moon emerges white as bone, for the first time since the killings began. Its light feels sterile, rather than sinister, in the aftermath. Investigators recover charred fragments of the cylinder. Melted trinkets fuse together like sorrowful or DNA tests on the severed hand. Little remains tie it to a missing woman from Lisbon, murdered 2 months earlier. International agencies link Eleonora to art smuggling rings stretching from Cairo to Sao Paulo. Her offshore accounts financed the order, laundering money through cultural preservation charities. The Hydra is revealed many heads, now one less. Weeks later, at yet another memorial service, Silvia reads a statement. The Order of the Rising Moon believed they could immortalize memory through murder. We answer their superstition with evidence, their cruelty with community. Memory belongs to the living. Cameras flash like electric fireflies. Trials proceed in multiple countries. Basic charges stick: homicide, conspiracy, terrorism. Yet the deeper philosophy behind the order splinters into countersuits claiming religious persecution. Sociologists coined the term amoricide, murder of lovers, for ritual ends and debate its implications on talk shows. Marco's footage of the crater becomes viral proof of the cult's apocalyptic intent. Silvia returns to Florence to find a letter slipped under her iron door. No Polaroid this time, only parchment smelling faintly of candle smoke. In looping calligraphy it reads, "You cauterized one wound, the moon will scab, but crescents always sharpen back to blades." No signature, no symbol. She burns the letter in her kitchen sink, watching flame curl the edges until words dissolve into black petals. That night, she places the Janus mask in a sealed evidence bag and hands it to Paola Rustici, instructing her to archive it with airtight chain of custody. Protocols never display it, never study it without 2 witnesses. Paola nods. Will this end? Silvia answers, not while someone finds romance beneath the moon, but we've trimmed fangs. Spring arrives, and with it, a cautious joy. Couples picnic along the Arno again, and painterly sunsets splash the Ponte Vecchio in gold. Silvia strolls the riverbank, breathing in wisteria. She carries no gun today, only a paperback novel, Marco's final manuscript, dedicated to the survivors. She pauses at a bench, opens the book, and reads the first line. Monsters persist, but so does the human story. She smiles. A weary, genuine curve. Across the water, cathedral bells underscoring twilight seem less foreboding now. Yet when she looks up, the moon has risen half full, the slicing smile of a crescent. She tosses a breadcrumb to the pigeons, feeling stitches beneath her sleeve itch in healing, and murmurs, "I see you." The crescent gleams, but tonight it does not leer. Tonight it merely watches, luminous and pale, as if contemplating which stories deserve to be kept and which should be surrendered to dusk. Silvia closes the book, rises, and walks toward the heart of Florence, ever vigilant, but no longer alone, in guardianship. The archivists have been eclipsed, but the city's true memory now resides in thousands of hearts, still beating, determined to write their own chapters beneath an indifferent sky. Chapter 5: Spiral of Glass Moons. Even in early summer, Florence wakes beneath a veil of dew, and those first translucent droplets cling to every rooftop tile like tiny, trembling promises. The city has begun to heal, yet the rubble of eclipsed ruins still loiters at the edge of collective vision. Cafes hum again, accordion notes flutter from open windows, and lovers resume midnight strolls along the Arno, holding hands as though clasping lifelines. But underneath the cobblestones, a different pulse continues. One Silvia Morini can feel in the soles of her shoes each time she crosses the Ponte alle Grazie. The Order of the Rising Moon has lost 2 curators, but not its appetite. Pieces shift beyond sight, aligning the next phase of a ritual written centuries ago in blood-inked script. A letter from Interpol arrives on her desk, thick as a novella. Inside, dossiers list couples slain across 5 continents during the last 3 decades, each case now flagged with the Crescent Heart sigil. The murders span deserts and skyscrapers alike, a honeymoon duo in Dubai, backpackers in Patagonia, university sweethearts outside Kyoto. Some files have lain dormant in evidence lockers, others remain open wounds in local precincts that never connected the threads. Silvia scans photos of bullet entry wounds, broken glass, stolen trinkets, variations on a single melody. She senses the swirling gyre of a global conspiracy, whose center has not yet revealed itself. Paula Rusticchi's voice crackles on the phone from Rome. The surviving cultists have exchanged plea deals for information, naming a new figure known as the Librarian. Apparently, this librarian supervises the migration of archive nodes in 10 countries and allegedly travels with a mobile reliquary, an armored shipping container modified to hold trophy cases in velvet-lined drawers. The container reportedly moves on false shipping manifests, tucked into cargo holds between containers of benign goods. Silvia scribbles notes, adrenaline flaring at the idea of a traveling vault, swallowing memories from port to port, like a gluttonous Kraken. Marco Venturi corners her in the Palazzo Vecchio courtyard. His publisher has financed a follow-up project, a documentary cross-referencing historic cult activity with shipping data. He waves a printout of maritime records, showing an unregistered container ship, the Nebula Argentea, making suspicious stops at Dubrovnik, Genoa, Casablanca. The manifest lists antiquities for restoration, signed by an alias matching Eleonora's deceased clerk. Marco's camera is ready, but he admits he no longer wants the front row seat. Notoriety and nightmares share the same pillow. Silvia rests a hand on his arm and says, "Stories sometimes require us to walk through fire a second time, because the first blaze only scorched the surface." That evening she presents her findings to Captain Cesare Bianchi and a task force from Guardia, the Finanza's maritime division. Their war room smells of printer toner and stale espresso, walls papered with port maps and lunar calendars. She proposes intercepting the Nebula Argentea at its next likely berth. Lisbon during a waxing gibbous that coincides with Port Festival dos Santos Populares. The librarian might anticipate the cover of fireworks and crowded streets. Bianchi nods, assigning a joint Italian-Portuguese strike team. Silvia volunteers for fieldwork. Paper victories do not quench her fury. The flight to Lisbon rides atop rumpled thunderheads, lightning stroking the wings like harp strings. Silvia watches distant flashes and wonders if the sky is fighting its own war. On landing, she tastes salt in the air, heavier than Tuscany's inland breezes. Portuguese police greet her at the terminal. Inspector Joanna Marcus's eyes sharp as wine-honed glass. Jonah has studied the Florence files and already briefed her team. Together they trace the ship's approach via eyes ghost pings illegally. Scrambled signals that flicker on radar at irregular intervals. Mid-afternoon sun glints off the Tijo River as the Nebula Argentea slides toward the docks. Gray holes stripped of identifying logos. From a vantage on an adjoining pier, Silvia watches cranes lower containers like steel toys. She feels the residual heat of danger radiating from one bland metal box painted seafoam green. Jonah receives a radio chirp. Customs flagged that container for irregular paperwork. Ground crews swarm, cutting the seal. Silvia's pulse lurches. This is too easy. Then a forklift jolts forward, accidentally puncturing the side panel. From the rent in the metal oozes something dark and viscous. A dockworker screams. Silvia runs forward despite shouted warnings. Inside the container, crimson silhouettes glisten in half-lit gloom. Dozens of purses, wallets, lockets, and even framed Polaroids hang on hooks, dripping preservative fluid onto the slatted floor. A quiet humming emanates from refrigeration units wired to battery packs. In the center sits a plexiglass coffin containing the bodies of two lovers, preserved like Sleeping Beauty nightmares. Their faces are serene, as if coaxed into death's pose mid-kiss. A single bullet wound mars each skull. The librarian's calling card, an open anatomy book laid across their chests, pages fused with blood. Margins display neat Portuguese script, quoting Fernando Pessoa. I bear the wounds of all the battles I avoided. Jonah steadies the dockworker, vomiting seawater in shock. Silvia photographs everything, stomach churning but mind cold. The librarian never intended this container to disappear quietly. He wanted discovery, spectacle, while forensics scramble. Sirens echo across the docks and another body located on a nearby quay. This one a customs officer shot through the eye, crescent heart carved into his cheek. In his hand, investigators find a train ticket stub for Madrid dated midnight. The librarian is already traveling inland. Silvia boards the overnight train with Jonah and two plainclothes agents. They move carriage to carriage beneath flickering fluorescent bars, scanning passengers for anomalies. Solitary men reading antique tomes, couples cradling each other perhaps too tenderly, travelers gripping briefcases that might hold relics. The train's rhythm lulls some passengers to sleep, but Silvia's nerves rattle with each click of wheel on rail. At 1:13, the conductor announces an unscheduled stop due to technical inspection. Doors hiss open onto a deserted rural platform, fog swirling under moth-gnawed lights. No, inspector's bored. Instead, three figures alight from the rear carriage and vanish into the mist. Jonah signals. Teams disembark pursuit. Footsteps crunch over gravel and dead grass. The moon slips behind clouds, erasing edges from the night. A distant whistle sounds an owl or something mimicking one. Silvia raises her pistol, breath measured. The fog parts enough to reveal an abandoned station house. Windows boarded, graffiti of stylized moons spanning the wall. Inside, candlelight quivers. Joanna's radio emits static, then dies. Batteries drained, though fresh. They press forward, boots squealing on warped floorboards. The house stinks of tallow and rust. On a makeshift altar rest two items, a portable hard drive and a folded map of Europe marked with concentric spirals radiating from a central point. Prague. A Polaroid paper clipped to the map shows the librarian's gloved hand holding a glass heart pendant in front of the Prague astronomical clock. On the back, neat handwriting states, "When the clock stops, the archive is reborn." No sign of the librarian's physical presence remains, only these breadcrumbs. As dawn bruises the horizon, Silvia and Jonah sit on the station's rotting platform, watching their train shrink into distance. They thumb through the map's coded spirals, decoding dates aligned to astronomical events. The next convergence surfaces in 9 days, the rare syzygy where full moon coincides with Earth at aphelion. Gravitational energies, the Order's writings treat as sacred. Prague's old city would host thousands of tourists, perfect cover for another indulgence and death. Back in Florence, Captain Bianchi connects with Czech National Police to secure cooperation, while Interpol analysts crack the hard drive's encryption. Inside they find digitized scans of archival notebooks dating back to 1453, now linked to modern shipping logs and biochemical supply orders. Embedded within is a live countdown timer, ending on the syzygy date at exactly 0:01, when the astronomical clock pauses its century-old mechanical cycle for scheduled maintenance. The symbolism is cruelly perfect. A clock that measures celestial bodies will halt, and the Order intends to seal new memories as the mechanism rests. Silvia flies to Prague, her luggage little more than weapons and case files. Gothic spires claw the rainy sky upon arrival, and Charles Bridge glimmers wet in yellow lamplight. The astronomical clock's facade appears innocent, its apostles moving an hourly dance for selfie-snapping tourists. Yet scaffolds already climb the tower, and a sign indicates maintenance closure on the syzygy night. She notes the scaffolding's vantage lines. A sniper could hide among the planks and fire into the crowded old town square below, retrieving trophies under chaos. Czech investigator Jan Svoboda introduces himself with stoic politeness, proud of his city's engineering marvel, but wary of foreign prophecies. Silvia presents evidence, including the map and countdown. Skepticism erodes when Svoboda receives a call. A young couple found dead that morning in their hostel room. Shots to the head, purses missing, security cameras inexplicably black-screened for 20 minutes. A printout of the hotel register shows a guest named Petter. Archiva checked out early, payment in cash. The librarian is already sampling the city's offerings. Surveillance blankets the old town in the days leading up to syzygy. Plainclothes, officers camouflaged as tourists, rooftop snipers scanning for threats. Silvia spends nights poring over medieval manuscripts in Prague Castle's treasury, tracing marginalia of astronomers who once predicted fate by planetary alignments. One text speaks of a transference rite requiring 3 pairs sacrificed at the trinity of nocturne bells, culminating with the placement of a glass heart inside a mechanical womb. She pictures the clock's gears, imagines a relic wedged among brass cogs, each tick infused with death. Syzygy night arrives beneath swollen clouds that glow faintly with lunar backlight. The square swells with revelers despite the maintenance. Blackout on chimes tourists drink mulled wine, children twirl sparklers. At 11:30 p.m., lights on the scaffolding wink out, plunging the upper tiers into darkness. Silvia's earpiece crackles with Czech commands. Unit Delta losing visual on Quadrant North. A suppressed shot pops from somewhere high. A balloon bursts. Crowd squeals thinking fireworks. Silvia's pulse detonates. She races up spiral stairs inside the clock tower. Heart beating in counterpoint to the stairwell's echo. Halfway up she finds the first victims. 2 backpackers slumped against masonry. Bullet wounds still steaming. Their camera dangles. Lens cracked. She curses, calling medical units. Steps continue upward, breath shredding in her lungs. On the belfry platform, the librarian stands poised like a crooked maestro. Long coat billowing, rifle equipped with a silencer and ultraviolet scope. A glass heart pendant swings from his neck, catching shards of moonlight through clouds. At his feet lies a velvet case containing 2 purses and a small jar labeled in Latin, Memoria, Novissima Nuist, Memories. He turns before she can speak, and for the first time Silvia sees his face, gaunt, almost academic, spectacles perched on nose, eyes placid as still water. He greets her by name, pronouncing each syllable with librarian calm. Inspector Morini, Your attendance honors our chronicle. She aims her Glock at his chest and orders him to drop the rifle. He responds by stepping back to the edge, heels over nothing but night. The archive demands one more pair, he says, voice serene. Shall we inscribe our own chapter together? Silvia inches closer, weapon steady. Helicopter rotor wash buffets the scaffolding, spotlight beams adrift. Sirens rise from below. The librarian smiles, revealing a porcelain dental cap etched with the crescent heart. Then he lifts the jar and hurls it into the clock's exposed gears. Glass shatters, viscous preservative splattering cogs. Sparks fly as metal grinds. The great clock groans, stutters, and for the first time in centuries, its hands seize at 0:01, freezing time. Gasps erupt from the square. Silvia lunges, but in the second her balance shifts, the librarian pivots backward. Diving into darkness with a final whispered phrase, memory falls upward. She rushes to the Legionel body below, only chaos, as officers push crowds to safety. The librarian must have tethered a rappel line hidden beneath the coat. She curses, scans rooftops. A shadow leaps across gabled tiles, melts into gloom. Helicopters spin searchlights too slow. He disappears. The next day Prague limps back to order, but the clock remains locked in paralysis. Genius gears clogged with human relics. Forensic divers retrieve a rope anchor from the tower facade, but no sign of the librarian emerges from river or street. Silvia meets Jan Svoboda under the stalled apostles. They exchange silent frustration. Yet she pockets a fragment of the shattered jar, now crusted in resin and blood. Chemical analysis later reveals traces of chloroform, a reagent for preserving tissue evidence, enough to indict when the librarian finally surfaces. Returning to Florence aboard a dawn flight, Silvia gazes out at the rippled haze cloaking the Alps. She realizes the order has shifted from a static cult to a living network, each curator orchestrating arcs of terror across continents. Every blow she lands only fragments the organism, sending spores to germinate elsewhere. But spores must settle in soil, and she can chart their wind. In the Palazzo Vecchio war room, she pins a fresh map, Europe crisscrossed with red threads, tracing container shipments, train routes, academic conferences on archival science. One node glows brighter, and invitation to a symposium on rare book preservation in Buenos Aires. Keynote speaker listed simply as P. Archivist in Spanish. She circles the location, feels the next chase ignite in her blood. The librarian will not rest, and neither will she. Night deepens outside, and moonlight slices through diamond-pane windows, cool and indifferent. Silvia stands alone amid paper constellations, yet she does not feel isolated. She has allies on every latitude now: Jonah in Lisbon, Jan in Prague, Beyoncé in Florence, Paula in Rome, and survivors who whisper vigilance in every tongue. The order might spiral across oceans, but its pattern becomes clearer with each rotation, and she is learning the dance, step for step. She whispers into the empty room a phrase both promise and threat. Archives may travel, but justice migrates faster. Wind rattles the shutters, and somewhere distant, a church bell tolls the hour that the clock in Prague could not strike. Time moves forward after all, dragging memory and monster alike into its unstoppable river. Silvia exhales, holsters her weapon, and begins drafting travel orders for Argentina, where another moon will rise and, perhaps, finally, descend upon the librarian in a blaze of uncompromising dawn. Chapter 6. Tango of Broken Clocks. The plane banks over the Rio de la Plata at a bruised sunrise hour, and Buenos Aires unfurls beneath the clouds like a sheet of aged parchment, its avenues furrowed with stories no archivist has yet managed to cage. From the window seat, Silvia Morini watches the water glimmer copper pink and tells herself this is just another city, just another hunt, but the restless silver in her blood whispers that every new continent becomes a labyrinth the moment the order inks its sigil on local maps. Nearby, Inspector Jonah Marks dozes with earbuds, still piping fado. Farther up the cabin, journalist Marco Venturi reviews camera equipment, lips moving in silent rehearsal of on-air intros. He hopes he will never need. Whatever waits in Argentina, they have crossed an ocean to face it together. Customs clears them with perfunctory questions. Unaware of the vault of glass hearts each traveler carries in memory. Outside, warm breezes ripple jacaranda leaves and scatter pale violet petals over the sidewalk like confetti spilled from some invisible parade. Silvia inhales the city's perfume-roasted coffee, diesel, and river humidity and feels the pulse of Buenos Aires in her feet. A subtle tango rhythm she will soon learn, or perish misstepping. Their local liaison, Lieutenant Camila Rojas, meets them beside a battered Ford pickup emblazoned with Policia de la Ciutat. She is young, hair cropped close, eyes hardened by months on femicide cases that seldom end clean. She drives them through Palermo's leafy grid while briefing the intel. 3 couples murdered in the last 12 years around the springtime tango festival. Forensic similarities dismissed as coincidence until Interpol flagged the purse trophies. Recently, shipments of museum conservation chemicals arrived at a private warehouse in Dock Sod, signed by an entity called Archivo Aurora S.A. Customs. Found nothing overtly illegal in the crate's formalin, liquid nitrogen. Specialized UV glass but paperwork originated from the same shell corporation that once leased the Portuguese container. Warehouse security footage shows the librarian's silhouette then spectral, briefcase in hand entering 2 weeks prior, and never officially leaving. Silvia's mind sketches the city in red yarn as Camila drives, symposium venue at Tetro, hotel safe houses in Recoleta, dock warehouses across the river marsh. Each intersection becomes a potential chessboard square, each cafe window a lens the librarian might observe through. She asks Camila for architectural plans of the theater. The librarian prefers vantage points that mingle performance with massacre. Tetro:"S facade rises like a stone orchestra. Sunlight carving Baroque flourishes into gold, and banners advertise the rare book preservation symposium with elegant restraint. Inside, rehearsal echoes of a soprano's scales swirl through marble corridors. Silvia registers the acoustics. A gunshot here would ring like a cracked bell, but might get lost amid applause if timed with a crescendo. She imagines the librarian adjusting a cufflink while marking targets from an opera box. That afternoon, credentials, Grant, Silvia, and Marco. Passage into symposium halls buzzing with archivists, conservators, and academics. Panels discuss ink fade analysis and feminist rediscoveries of lost. Dyer's noble work, grafted onto the same obsession the order has perverted. At a booth for a German glass case manufacturer, Silvia's gaze snags on a man leafing through product manuals. He wears wire-rimmed spectacles, charcoal suit perfectly pressed. Nothing overtly sinister, till she notices the pendant just visible beneath his tie knot. A stylized astronomical clock. She signals Marco, camera rolling low. They tail the man through exhibition aisles, scented with vellum and varnish. He pauses at a display of UV filter laminate, speaks soft Spanish to the vendor about resisting lunar bleaching. Silvia edges closer, catches the accent European, but not Argentine, perhaps Czech. When the vendor steps away, the man slips a business card onto the glass. P. Archivist, Servesios, de Memoria, itinerant, with a phone number she recognizes from Prague manifest logs. She makes the call. Inspector Morini. She greets in rapid Italian. The man stiffens just enough to reveal he understands. Their eyes meet, and the symposium hall shrinks to a throat, breath held. He smiles. Ah, the woman who tries to break clocks. Silvia keeps her voice level. Clocks break themselves when gears corrode with blood. He inclines his head in respect or condescension, unclear, then glides into the crowd. Silvia follows. He weaves like a trained dancer, pivoting through tourists, snapping photos of ornate ceilings, vanishing behind a partition of velvet curtains that read staff only. By the time she slips through, he is gone. Only another curtain flutters at the far end of a backstage corridor. Marco catches up, panting, camera low. Silvia whispers, "Trap." They retreat, plotting instead of charging. From the audience hall, a cellist rehearses Piazzala, each bow stroke trembling with unresolved tension. Silvia thinks. Tango musican, art, born of longing and violence. The librarian has chosen his theater well. Night cloaks, Buenos Aires in neon and humidity. Camila's task force sets surveillance on the symposium, installing motion sensors on catwalks and fiber optic cameras in vent shafts. Over matte city maps, they triangulate the librarian's possible escapes. Theater basement leads to service tunnels connecting to Linear D subway. Rooftop provides line of sight to Plaza Lavalle, easy crowd blending. Silvia insists on placing undercover lovers in parked cars near potential ambush lanes. Camila balks too dangerous, but Silvia knows the librarian hunts pairs like wolves graze weakest calves. 3 evenings pass in taut anticipation. Symposium sessions culminate in a midnight gala beneath chandeliers the size of small planets. Scholars swirl in satin and tails. Rare manuscripts rest under glass on pedestals like shy ghosts. Silvia, dressed in a borrowed black gown, feels armorless without her usual leather jacket. But the Glock presses reassuringly against her thigh holster, hidden by chiffon folds. Marco blends in as a videographer filming archival milestone interviews. Camila roams disguised as catering staff. 11:47. The orchestra strikes the first chords of Ardios Nonino. Guests drift toward the parquet floor, couples forming, hips aligning to tango's melancholy heartbeat. The librarian loves symbolism, the dance of passion preluding a kill. Silvia's earpiece crackles with Camila's voice movement near. Northwest balcony box. Silvia climbs marble stairs, skirt hitching. Heartbeat matches. Bandoneon pulsa. In the dim box, she spies silhouette against velvet drapes the librarian, tranquilizer pistol aimed at the crowd. Not lethal, she realizes, but designed to topple couples unconscious so he can harvest at leisure. She steps behind him and cocks her Glock. Clock ends now. He pivots, lowering the tranquilizer pistol like offering a pen. Such fervor, he murmurs, "Yet you still dance to my metronome." He drops the pistol, draws a small detonation switch from his breast pocket. Silvia sees his thumb hover. C4. Gas. She cannot risk a shot. Instead, she lunges. They collide, weapon clattering into curtains. The black gown hinders. She rips up. Seam gains leverage. He's stronger than his gaunt frame suggests, grappling with librarian calm. Below, the orchestra crescendos. Guests swirl, unaware beneath precarious fates. They crash through curtains onto the narrow balcony ledge. Wind from ceiling vents flutters Silvia's hair. 30 meters down, dancers pivot in synchronized longing. The librarian wrenches forward, tries to fling her into the void, but she hooks an elbow around the brass railing, driving her knee into his ribs. A crack may be bone. He wheezes yet smiles, pulling a glass heart pendant from his vest pocket and tossing it into the ballroom. It shatters on marble, releasing a puff of fine powder. Dancers stumble as dust rises chloroform aerosol. Silvia guesses. She knees him again, wrestling the detonator free, crushes it under her heel. Wires inside spark futilely. Security alarms awaken. Camila's voice barks evacuation commands. The librarian rips free, scrambling along the ledge, toward a maintenance scaffold. Silvia pursues, skirts shredded, Glock drawn now with no crowds below. She fires. Bullet grazes his shoulder, dark bloom staining fabric. He leaps onto scaffold, descends like a spider on lines. She follows but loses him among stage rigging labyrinth. By the time she reaches an alley exit, Only a smear of blood leads to an idling motorcycle whose driver wears a silver crescent helmet. Machine roars away into Palermo night. Gas dissipates. No casualties beyond mild chemical sedation. But the librarian escaped again, leaving only riddles carved into the balcony's wooden baluster. Silvia later finds a phrase in Spanish: Los relojes se rompen para que el tiempo pueda sangrar. The clocks break so that time may bleed. Forensics. Come Teatro Colón. Inside hollow column behind the librarian's vantage, they discover a new reliquary, chest empty. He planned to fill it. The chest's brass plate bears coordinates etched beneath the order sigil: 3436S, 5822 feet, W. Dock, Sud Warehouse. A taunt. Dawn smolders ash rose over the port when tactical teams breach. Archivo Aurora SA. Rows of refrigeration units hum inside darkness pungent with antiseptic. Glass cases line the walls, each item labeled in meticulous Spanish: Recuerdo 001 and Rosario. Recuerdo 140. Que Lisboa. Silvia counts 180 trophies: purses, rings, locks of hair sealed in resin blocks shaped like crescent moons. But the newest row stands vacant, save for placards already printed with last night's date and blank victim names. The librarian had built room in his ledger for couples he failed to claim, their absence now an open wound. Camila radios from upstairs. Computer mainframe still logged in. On-screen blinks a countdown set for 6 days, correlating with a fragile sliver moon-thin blade poised before waxing. Destination field. Archive spiral. Phase origin. Ushuaia. Silvia's heart clutches. Ushuaia, Tierra del Fuego, the end of the world, where Atlantic and Pacific riptides collide under ice. Perfect isolation. The librarian intends to drag his reliquary into the world's last quiet corner, perhaps to sanctify the order anew with fresh sacrifices beneath austral stars. She convenes command within the warehouse. Satellite imagery shows a decommissioned naval research base on Isla de los Estados 156 kilometers east of Ushuaia, recently by a private archaeological institute, whose board includes the same Czech shell corporation. There is no scheduled ferry, only chartered cargo plane or private yacht could reach. Camila's team discovers a crate containing a collapsible autopsy table and embalming chemicals pre-packed for transport, labeled with airway tags departing Ezeiza International in 48 hours. They have 2 days to intercept. Marco films. The grim inventory, narration cracking despite journalistic composure. He confesses to Silvia in hushed Spanish, "I thought I'd grown calluses, but this feels like reading my own obituary in advance." She squeezes his shoulder. That fear is proof we're alive. The librarian hates life's noise, our pulse, our love, our messy memory. So we roar louder. They assemble Task Force Fuegian Dawn, blending Argentine naval commandos with Italian carabinieri and Portuguese specialists. A C-130 cargo plane flies them into Ushuaia in the black of pre-dawn. The world outside the porthole looks primeval, peaks jutting like dragon spines, forests shaggy with austral beech, channels wisped with glacial breath. It is winter here. Nights stretch 14 hours, and the moon rules the sky like a tyrant. A patrol cutter christened Albatross slices icy water toward Isla de los Estados. Gales lash deck rails with needles of sleet. Silvia braces against the wind, scanning waves for phantom vessels. At 3:12 radar blips, a steel hull moored in Caleta La Croix Bacalcine, silent. Through binoculars she sees the librarian's motorcycle strapped to deck. They've found him. Under cloak of gale, commandos deploy rib boats, engines muffled. Silvia and Jonah ride bow, cold gnawing through Kevlar. They beach on shingle beneath cliffs streaked in moonlight. Wind moans across jagged rock like a choir of the damned, ascending the cliff trail. They spot floodlights crowning the abandoned base, now repurposed into a cathedral of refrigeration units, visible through shattered panes. Inside, the scene could be a film negative of Villa del Hombre, steel walls, gleaming under merciless leads, floor drains ready for runoff, gurneys draped in crisp linens awaiting lovers' final embrace. At the chamber's center stands the librarian, wounded arm now in a sling fashioned from silk, patterned with the Prague clock. He welcomes them with a courtly nod. Witnesses arrive, he says. Memory prospers. Silvia steps forward, gun leveled. You're outnumbered, surrounded, and bleeding. End the archive here. He laughs in glacier cold. Archives never end. They only change custodians. Look around. Have you seen such preservation? These units will hum long after. Our bones sublimate. Camilla's shout precedes gunfire as a hidden cultist fires from a catwalk. Bullets spark off steel. Marco dives behind containers, camera still rolling. Jonah and Argentine commandos return fire. The air rattles with echoes. The librarian ducks behind a cryogenic pod, labeled Luna Originario types, commands on a tablet. Pods hiss, valves opening to release clouds of frigid vapor. Silvia realizes he's starting a cascade to freeze evidence and anyone trapped inside. She sprints through fog-white corridors, tracking his footsteps by blood drips. He slips into a narrow service shaft lit by emergency strobes. Wind howls from vents leading outside. He's heading for the shore cave, rumored to house a submersible drone. In the shaft, they grapple again, breath pluming. Ice forms, needles on eyelashes. Silvia fires. Bullet punches through his calf. He crumples but crawls, leaving crimson smears on bulkhead. She follows, kicking away a dropped scalpel that skitters like a tin insect. They emerge onto a precipice above frothing surf. A portable drone subwaits, lights blinking, tether line cutting into sea. The librarian drags himself toward it. Silvia holsters pistol, grips him by collar. Look at your archive, she snarls. Over wind. It's shards and fog now. You lost. He gazes up, eyes hazy with pain, yet oddly tranquil. Loss is the parent of memory. You will carry me longer than I would carry myself. He twists, slamming a detonator on his belt. She leaps back. Nothing happens. Camilla's cyber team jammed remote signals. The librarian's expression shifts, the first real fear she's seen in those eyes. Silvia snaps cuffs on his wrist, blood stringing between links. Helicopter searchlights scour the cliff, commandos descending ropes as they airlift the librarian onto Albatross. Silvia watches base windows glow with containment lights. Joanna's team shuts cryogenic pods and seals evidence. Sea roars. Aurora Australis flickers green ribbons across polar sky, as if the world writes its own luminous archive on darkness. Defying curators. Back in Ushuaia, medical staff treat the librarian's wounds under heavy guard. International warrants flood in. Paola Rustici video calls, tears visible tears of relief. We have him, Silvia states, voice thick. Yet victory is tempered by the librarian's final whisper on the helicopter. The custodian will open the lunar codex. Silvia presses him for identity. He only smiles, lips blue from cold, and slips into morphine sleep. Days later, a sealed crate arrives at Florence headquarters. No return address. Inside, a single broken pocket watch, whose minute hand is shaped like a crescent heart, frozen at 12:01. Beneath it, a note, Custodian inbound. Silvia sets the watch on her desk, gears ticking in her mind even if the mechanism is still. The librarian is shackled, but the order draws yet another breath, as infinite as lunar cycles. She looks out the window at Santa Maria del Fiore's, dome painted orange by dusk. Church bells toll. In their echo, she hears tango rhythms, primal, waves, clock gears, and the hush of lovers' secrets. All noises the order seeks to silence, yet all still alive. She whispers to herself, and to whatever ear might be pressed against the veil, Let the custodian come. We have stories left to tell. Chapter 7, Custodian of Echoes. Morning haze drifts across Florence like a half-remembered lullaby, softening the edges of rooftops and cloaking the Arno in gossamer calm. Yet behind shuttered windows, the city holds its breath, waiting for news from Rome, where the captured librarian, real name Pavel Horak, is to stand before an international tribunal. Police caravans rumble pre-dawn streets, their muffled sirens painting anxiety on plaster walls. In the Palazzo di Giustizia, rows of bulletproof glass gleam beneath sodium lights. Prepared for a spectacle of confession and reckoning, reporters rehearse solemn headlines. Survivors clutch rosaries and battered photographs of lovers lost to a moon-crazed cabal. Today, the Order of the Rising Moon is supposed to fracture under the weight of its own atrocities. Silvia Morini sits in a witness room crowded with dossier boxes stamped evidence, global homicide case. She reviews her testimony one more time, though every detail already glows behind her eyelids at night. Pavel will plead not guilty by reason of spiritual mandate, she expects. His defense counsel, a slick Argentine attorney with eyes like whetstone, will call him a misunderstood scholar. But the video from Ushuaia is unimpeachable. Horak cradling a tranquilizer rifle on Tito:'s balcony, the reliquary chest he forged for fresh trophies. His words, captured on Marco Venturi's microphone. The archive demands one more pair, are a confession carved in digital granite. Just after 9, armored doors roll aside and guards lead the librarian into the chamber. Bandaged and shackled, he looks more monastic than monstrous, head bowed, sling cradling his wounded arm. Courthouse lighting burns his skin into parchment. For a moment Silvia imagines him as a relic himself. A dusty gospel bound in human vellum, pages brittle with secrets no one was meant to decode. She feels neither pity nor triumph, only a quiet resolve that memory, if curated rightly, can redeem, rather than consume. Proceedings commence. Testimony flows like glacier melts low, relentless, carving canyons through denial. Forensic analysts describe purse fibers lifted from refrigeration units. Ballistic experts match the librarian's rifle to bullets pulled from Prague hostel walls. Camila Rojas recounts aerosol dust swirling under chandeliers. Jonah marks details containers oozing preservative blood in Lisbon docks. Each account tightens the noose, then the defense rises. The attorney argues that Pavel was merely a caretaker of endangered love, preserving moments before they faded into banal domesticity. He invokes art, Caravaggio's, chiaroscuro, marble slouch of David, suggesting that violent beauty transcends lesser moral codes. The rhetoric stinks of corrupted philosophy, yet among the observers, a subtle shift occurs. Some journalists note the drama, scribbling phrases like art house apologia that will sell papers. Others glance toward Pavel, curiosity flickering like moth wings. In that micro-hesitation, Silvia sees the order's true danger, not guns or scalpels, but the seduction of spectacle. Still, the prosecution's momentum appears unstoppable till a bailiff jogs to the bench, whispers into the judge's ear, and hands over a sealed envelope. The judge's face drains. He calls an immediate recess and retires behind chambers. Murmurs spread. Legally, Silvia cannot approach Pavel, but she watches him raise his eyes for the first time, a faint grin tugging the stitches at his lip. Something has shifted outside the courtroom's walls. During recess, Silvia joins Paola Rustici and Captain Bianchi in a conference alcove. A classified fax has arrived from Interpol Central. 3 coordinated attacks last night, Barcelona, Krakow, and Cape Town, each targeting couples parked near scenic overlooks. Each executed with the signature point to 2 Beretta, each trophy purse. Missing. Surveillance pulled a new symbol carved into tree bark at all 3 sites, a crescent moon flanked by a feather quill. Beneath, a single word etched in Latin: Custodes. Guardians. The order has not folded. It has promoted new leadership. The tribunal resumes, but the judge now exhibits nerves raw as exposed wire. Another note arrives within minutes, a bomb threat against the courthouse. Evacuation begins. Guards hustle Pavel down a service corridor toward an armored van. Silvia tries to follow, but security blocks her path. She detours through a stairwell, emerges in the subterranean garage just as alarms wail. The van's engine revs, taillights flare, then a concussive blast throws her sideways. Fireball blossoms, glass rains. When she shakes off the ringing in her ears, the van is a crater of flame. Guards slick with soot scrambling for survivors, but a smaller side door stands ajar. Its security keypad melted. Fresh footprints lead into maintenance tunnels. Pavel. Horak is gone. Chaos erupts across Rome. Paramedics attend burned officers. Bomb squad sweeps for secondary charges. Silvia commandeers a patrol scooter and tears through traffic, radio scanning. CCTV eventually locates a figure in prison scrubs commandeering a delivery truck on Via Appia Antica, heading southeast toward the countryside. Highway patrol erects blockades, but the truck swerves into vineyard lanes, ditches behind cypress hedges, and disappears. 2 hours later, drones pick up a wrecked truck near Castel Gandolfo. Doors open, blood on the steering wheel, driverless. 20 kilometers south, a rural convent reports an intruder stole a nun's habit at knife point and vanished on foot. At dusk, a motorboat is stolen from a lakeside dock, throttle jammed east toward the Tyrrhenian Sea. The order had this exfiltration scripted like a passion play. Pavel is in the wind and, judging by the bomb's precision, not alone. 3 days pass with no sightings. Then, an envelope arrives at Palazzo Vecchio, marked with the crescent quill symbol. Inside, a Polaroid of Pavel reciting something from a leather-bound tome, while standing before a stone vault door, stenciled Archivio, Aurora Custodian access only. Behind him, lantern-lit walls reveal Gothic arches, possibly catacombs. A caption in ornate fountain pen reads, "The librarian has surrendered his key to the custodian." The grand indexing begins. Beneath, an address coordinates to the Basilica dei Santi Bonifacio e Alessio on Rome's Aventine Hill, an eighth structure riddled with crypts. Italian authorities deploy tactical units under moonless sky. Silvia insists on joining. Marco tags along, armed only with camera, protective vest, and looming dread. Basilica grounds are cordoned by ancient stone, olive trees rustling like parchment. Inside, votive candles flicker among marble saints. Nuns kneel in hushed prayer. No sign of Pavel or Custodian. Silvia descends spiral stairs to the crypt, walls freezing damp. The labyrinth smells of frankincense and centuries-old dust. Engraved sarcophagi line the corridor, lids carved with angels eroded blank-eyed. Behind the altar she finds a door ajar, fresh scrape, marks in stone. She draws her Glock, gestures for Marco to film. They slip beyond into an auxiliary chamber, where the air tastes metallic, as though the earth itself were bleeding. The vault is empty, but for a pedestal, supporting the lunar codex, an illuminated manuscript, bound in cracked azure leather, paginated, with phases of the moon. Its script dances between Latin and an esoteric cipher. Gold leaf glints like frozen solar flares around woodcut diagrams of conjoined hearts pierced by crescents. Silvia flips pages with gloved fingers. Margins contain annotations in Horak's handwriting, but newer notes in ink. Deeper crimson overlay his signed with a stylized C. The custodian has written Adena, formalizing something called Echo Protocol, a plan to transpose memory into universal resonance. An index lists target cities arranged in spiral sequence, starting with Barcelona, passing through Krakow, Cape Town, then Florence, then onward, across hemispheres, until the spiral tightens around a terminus, Alexandria, Egypt. Dates correspond. 2 upcoming lunar perigees, culminating in a total eclipse, 8 months away, Marco whispers. They're mapping a global crescendo. A sudden clatter behind them, Gothic doors slamming shut. They spin. Atop stairs silhouettes appear, robed figures wearing half-masks inlaid with silver quills. Pistols raise. Silvia dives behind a sarcophagus. Marble chips splinter as bullets. Ping. Marco ducks, camera slipping from his grasp, lens cracking. The robed shooters advance with methodical cadence. From a side passage, Jonah Marks and Camilla's task force burst in, weapons barking. Stone shatters, ricochets scream. 2 cultists drop. The rest retreat up stairwell, slamming an iron grate. Lock clicks. Silvia sprints, but gate bars escape. She fires through. Misses. Footsteps fade. Cameras later reveal the cultists had planted timed thermite on support columns. Explosions cascade 10 minutes after their flight, collapsing parts of the crypt. Fire crews smother embers, but priceless sarcophagi fracture. The lunar codex, luckily rescued, now rests in evidence vacuum bag, ink smudged by falling ash. Yet Pavel Horak did not appear among attackers. He is presumed moved along the spiral path under Custodian escort. Interpol decodes the ciphers first. Stanza. Next strike planned for Florence itself. Date set 5 weeks hence, at the height of Ferragosto celebrations. According to Codex, the Custodian intends to suture the spiral's origin with its echo, implying a massacre at the birthplace of the initial monster killings. Fear that once ebbed surges anew in the City of Lilies. Florentine officials consider canceling festivals, but merchants protest. Tourism is lifeline. Silvia proposes covertly flooding streets with plainclothes officers rather than broadcasting panic. She also suggests a decoy, a public vow to exhibit recovered trophies at a remembrance vigil inside the Uffizi courtyard. Scheduled the night after Ferragosto, she suspects the Custodian cannot resist relics that legitimize his new curatorship. The trap, if sprung correctly, could sever the Order's body from its ever-multiplying heads. Preparation unfolds like staging for an opera. Engineers embed microcameras in Uffizi statues. Snipers perch atop Palazzo Vecchio. Bomb sniffers sweep every planter. For bait, Paula loans several preserved purses sealed in armored glass. Their silent testimony chills even the hardened technicians. Meanwhile, Silvia studies the Codex nightly, tracking marginalia, trying to understand the Custodian's psyche, where the librarian sought to catalog love's last heartbeat. The Custodian aims for something broader, echoes reverberating across collective consciousness through synchronized trauma. He writes of sonic signatures of grief, suggests that every scream contains a harmonic that, when amplified, can etch permanence upon the lunar mirror. It reads like metaphysical madness, yet the murders manifest real. Passion flares between Silvia and Marco in those restless nights, forged in shared terror, yet always tempered by the awareness that intimacy marks them as targets. They hold hands, walking over Ponte Santa Trinita, scanning dark alcoves for glints of .22 barrels. They sleep in separate safe houses to avoid presenting themselves as a pair. Love, ironically, becomes an act of tactical denial. Ferragosto, dawn breaks oven hot, cicadas, droning. Crowds flow into piazzas carrying gelato and parasols. Street vendors hawk leather belts beneath banners lionizing Medici ghosts. Plainclothes officers mingle, eyes behind sunglasses scanning for quill pins, crescent tattoos, unnatural gait. Silvia roams Via de Neri, disguised as a tourist, straw hat shading her scarred eyebrow. Marco transmits live cultural pieces from Piazza della Signoria, camera capturing the festival's innocent spate. For watchers. Hours pass with no incident. Dusk paints the Duomo in peach and russet. Fireworks ignite over Cassin Park. Children cheer. Silvia's earpiece stays quiet, tension ratcheting. Midnight nears. The Remembrance Vigil at Uffizi prepares to admit registered guests, museum curators, victim families, press. Crackle in headset. Bianchi's voice, urgent. A drone overhead has caught 3 infrared signatures entering rooftop scaffolding near the Vasari corridor, connecting Palazzo Vecchio to the Uffizi. Coordinates stream into Silvia's phone. She sprints, weaving through festival debris, heart-punching ribs, at the corridor's midpoint, shielded by tarps for restoration. She climbs scaffolding ladders, sweat greasing palms. Torchlight trembles overhead. No, not torchlight, phone, backlights used as beacons. She ascends into an attic crawl space, pistol first. Inside, 2 cultists kneel assembling a tripod rifle fitted with sound suppressor and thermal scope. A third stands sentinel, mask etched with quill. She fires a warning shot. Cultists whirl. Silenced bullets hiss past. She ducks, fires again. Drops the lookout, with chest impact that thuds like books stacked. The rifleman kicks the tripod toward her to obstruct, spills triggers onto planks. Second cultist lunges with serrated dagger. She parries with pistol barrel, feels blade graze forearm. Pain blooms warm. She drives elbow into cultist's temple. He crumples. The rifleman flees along beams toward a hatch over the courtyard. Silvia limps after, blood seeping, but adrenaline burning. Rifleman kicks hatch open, moonlight flooding. Wind swirls confetti ashes from fireworks. He braces rifle, aims down toward glass cases on display platform where survivors stand and hush. She screams down earpiece. Sniper. Get them down, over radio. Bianchi yells orders. Floodlights explode. Sirens. Spectators scatter. She slams into rifleman's back. Momentum sending both skidding along tiles toward a dizzying drop over courtyard. The rifle clatters into darkness. They grapple on terracotta slope, boots crunching shards of aged tile. Far below, armored guards herd guests inside, but the courtyard remains exposed. Rifleman draws backup pistol, steel flashing. Silvia traps his wrist, rests the gun, but his other hand reveals a detonator. He grins beneath half-mask. Echo begins. He hisses, before he can click. A single gunshot cracks the air marco from the scaffold hatch. Borrowed handgun steady. The bullet pierces rifleman's shoulder. He yelps, detonator tumbling off roof, landing harmlessly on cobblestones. Rifleman swipes blade across Silvia's thigh, then leaps, sacrificing survivability for mission. He hurtles off rooftop, body shattering through museum awning, smashing into marble below. Alarms howl. Silvia exhales ragged breath, turning to Marco. Blood slicks her legs. He reaches for her. They freeze, acknowledging their embrace is visible to sniper optics. They cannot be sure, are all neutralized. Marco steadies, retracts hand. They nod a silent heartbreak, duty before longing. Downstairs, medics pronounce rifleman's death. Mask removed, reveals unknown face, fingerprints acid burned, but a silver pendant clutched in fist depicts double, crescent forming a circle symbol of eclipse. On its back, micro-engraved coordinates point beyond Florence to Alexandria. Spiral's terminus beckons. Within hours, Interpol alerts Egyptian authorities. Silvia coordinates with antiquities, police. The Codex's final chapter references the Great Library's lost scrolls and lunar mirrors arrayed in the desert's eye. Satellite imagery near Lake Marriott reveals a new construction site masquerading as archaeology camp. Funded by yet another shell company, Crescent Scribe Holdings. The Custodian is staging a grand finale where the most celebrated archive in human history once stood. Before departure, Silvia sits beside Arno at dawn, stitches in her leg throbbing. Marco joins, silent. They watch city lights dim as sun climbs. Pale gold. He brushes her hand anyway, rules damned. They trade a kiss salt-tasting of fear and hope. Whatever Alexandria holds, they resolve to face it as an unbreakable paravan, if that marks them target number one. Florence wakes around them, unaware of the near catastrophe overhead, unaware of an echo racing southeast across Mediterranean. Skies. Pigeons flutter, morning bells chime, and the river keeps its slow gossip. Silvia listens to that gentle murmur, storing the sound inside her until it becomes another piece of living memory the custodian can never catalog. She rises and whispers to the water. Echoes fade too. Then she and Marco walk toward their flight shadows long in the newborn light, ready to trace the spiral to its final coil and shatter it once and for all. Beneath the unblinking gaze of a desert moon. Chapter 8. The Shadow Library. Moonless night wraps the eastern Mediterranean in velvet the color of spilled ink, and the cargo plane bearing Silvia Morini, Marco Venturi, and a phalanx of international officers hums low through its folds like a contraband whisper. Far beneath the wings, Alexandria glitters in constellations of sodium glare that flicker whenever blown desert sand scours the power lines. Every light, every flash of headlights on the Corniche, reminds Silvia that the custodian has chosen this city precisely because it sits on a fault line of memory, the cradle of the ancient library, the vanished ark of Mediterranean knowledge, a place that once vowed to preserve every word ever spoken and failed. In the cargo bay, crates of evidence rattle in their straps. Among them rests the lunar codex, secured in line-lined foam, its pages fluttering as if breathing in the vibration. Paolo Rustici, leaning over a tactical map, traces a red grease pencil circle around a fenced archaeological compound on the southern shore of Lake Mariotte. Official paperwork calls the dig project Aurora, supposedly a search for Ptolemaic warehouses. Satellite images, however, show fresh concrete pads, electrical transformers, and a handful of prefabricated buildings arrayed in a perfect logarithmic spiral. At the spiral's heart lies a rectangular structure whose roof panels are covered with mirrored film. Joanna. Marx murmurs that the custodian must intend to use those mirrors in some lunatic experiment, perhaps focusing moonlight the way an ancient heliograph harnesses the sun. Silvia wonders aloud if the mirrors are literal or metaphorical. In the codex, the phrase lunar mirror appears dozens of times, usually beside passages about reflection, duplication, and echo. She imagines the custodian envisioning humanity's collective grief, bouncing off those panels, ricocheting night after night, amplifying until it engraves itself on the face of the moon. It is lunacy, but lunacy has spilled far too much real blood already to dismiss. The plane touches down at Borg El Arab Airfield just before dawn. Warm air rushes into the cargo bay, scented with diesel, brine, and a hint of cumin. Egyptian antiquities. Police meet them with curt nods and convoy them through awakening streets, where bakery doors yawn to release clouds of pastry steam. Marco's camera bobs between dashboard saints and dusty windshields, capturing shopkeepers, sweeping sidewalks as if the day ahead were ordinary, as if no one planned to consecrate a slaughter in the city's forgotten outskirts. At the compound's perimeter, dunes swirl around barbed wire and guard towers manned by men in contractor fatigues, bearing no insignia. Drones launch from the convoy's flatbeds, thermal feeds painting the sandy complex in brushstrokes of orange and blue. Heat signatures cluster around the mirrored building like phosphorescent barnacles. Silvia counts dozens of figures too. Many for a simple dig team, too many for guards. Jonah confirms. The custodian has gathered his choir. Command sets up in an abandoned date-packing warehouse 3 kilometers away. The operation's code name is Echo Breaker. Argentine Commandos. Portuguese Go, Egyptian Saga, and Italian GIS coordinate a pre-dawn breach. Yet Silvia, reading the codex again, sees that the ritual is timed not to dawn, but to the moment the waxing moon rises low on the horizon, casting a pale disk across Mariotte's still water. Local farmers call that moment the mirror hour. Without the moon's appearance, the custodian's symbolism collapses. She argues to wait until the mirror hour, lure the ritual to the point of commitment, then strike. Reluctantly, the brass agrees. Time stretches like taffy, The sun climbs to a white roar, baking sand into glassy crusts. Silvia paces the warehouse's shadowed corners, resisting exhaustion. Marco edits footage, his face waxy under fluorescent tubes. He has recorded his own will on a memory card, just in case. When Silvia notices, he shrugs and says, "Everyone archives something." Evening bleeds into copper dusk. They suit up, Kevlar hydration packs, climbing harnesses. Silvia slides the codex's final page into an inner pocket insurance against whatever cipher triggered the custodian's madness. She and Marco exchange a kiss that tastes of adrenaline and dust. Neither says what they fear most, that the Order's spiral has wound so tight around their lives, they may never again separate personal pulse from the hunt's heartbeat. Convoy engines idle, far enough out not to telegraph arrival. Boots crunch sand. Drones cut silent circles overhead. Then the first sliver of moon peeks over desert scrub, a sickle bright as polished bone. Radio chatter hisses, heat signatures converging on the mirrored roof. The custodian has summoned his participants. They move. Joanna's unit slips through a breach cut earlier in the fence. Paula leads a forensic squad hauling cryogenic evidence crates for quick preservation of any trophies found. Silvia moves with the spear, thrust 6 commandos weaving between shipping containers draped in camouflage net. Marco follows, camera on chest rig, lens glowing with red tally light. Through a ventilation grate, they glimpse an interior atrium lit by ultraviolet lamps. The floor is a translucent map of the Mediterranean coast. Beneath it, thousands of glass vials refract blue LEDs like deep-sea plankton. Each vial contains a relic purse clasp, Polaroid fragment, curled letter scrap arrayed in radial patterns. Their glow pulses to the rhythm of sub-bass speakers hidden in walls. Every vibration seems to breathe, a collective heartbeat stolen from victims. At the atrium's far end stands a rostrum. The custodian appears there, draped in ivory robes, stitched with silver quills, face obscured by a full mask, lacquered in mirror shards. Pavel Horak, the librarian, kneels beside him, wrists bound. His expression is fervid, as if martyrdom were an embrace he long awaited. Custodian's voice booms through hidden amplifiers, smooth, almost soothing. He speaks in Italian, Spanish, and then Arabic, each tongue praising the silence beyond. Love's decay and promising tonight's echo will seed permanence across centuries. With a theatrical flourish, he reveals a glass dagger etched with lunar glyphs. He presses its flat against Pavel's cheek. The librarian weeps, not from fear, but from awe. Silvia inhales, aims, overcomes. She whispers the go signal. Flash grenades arc into the atrium, erupt white. Commandos, storm entries. Gunfire crackles like ripping linen. Mirror panels shatter overhead, raining diamond splinters. Cultists return fire with suppressed pistols. Rounds ping ultraviolet bulbs, plunging corners into swirling violet strobe. Silvia advances toward the rostrum. The custodian, unflustered, drags Pavel upright, blade at the librarian's throat. Blood pearls, shimmer. "One more love to archive," he calls, voice amplified unnervingly calm. "Your devotion to each other will serve." His masked gaze turns to Silvia and Marco. She realizes he does not mean Pavel. He means her and Marco. The moonlight now streams through broken roof plates, spotlighting them like doomed protagonists on an ancient stage. From the depths of her pocket, Silvia draws the codex page. She shouts that it is the only unscanned folio, the final key the custodian has chased. She waves it over a flaming light fixture, threatening to burn it. The custodian hesitates. Marco swings his camera toward the confrontation, live streaming to secured cloud storage. In that millisecond of pause, Joanna's marksman fires. The bullet shatters the glass dagger, shards exploding against the custodian's mask. He reels, drops Pavel. Commandos rush. Pavel, freed, lunges at his former superior, tackling him into the map floor with a howl of betrayal. Their weight cracks plexiglass. Files topple, loosened memories spilling across marble like phosphorescent tears. Silvia sprints, slides down steps, grabs Marco's hand, helps drag Pavel away as the custodian staggers upright. Masks split to reveal a gaunt woman's face, late 40s, eyes sea-storm gray. She spits blood and quotes from the codex. When the archive is sundered, the world forgets itself. She hits a switch on her belt. Sirens wail. A countdown flashes on every wall-mounted tablet. 90 seconds. Thermite charges, Silvia guesses, rigged beneath the vial chamber. Commandos scream evacuation orders. Silvia wrenches Pavel by the collar. He resists, babbling that he must witness the echo's birth. Jonah tranquilizes him. They drag his limp body. Marco keeps filming. 80 seconds. They muscle through smoke, leap over burning catwalk sections. Cultists scatter like roaches, some attempting to salvage vials, others in fanatic ecstasy, raising arms to falling glass rain. The custodian disappears into fumes. 60 seconds. They burst into service corridor. Paula and forensic crew shove relic crates onto sleds, refusing to abandon evidence. Silvia snatches to nearest, slinging straps over wounded shoulder. 40 seconds. Exit looms, moon hanging above dunes. Marco crashes sideways as a cultist bursts from alcoves swinging a crowbar. Silvia fires. Cultist Marco regains. Camera lens cracked, but rolling. 20 seconds. Outside, convoy idles. Engines redline. Commandos fling Pavel into armored van. Slam doors. Paola's relic sleds lock into flatbed. Silvia and Marco jump aboard half-moving truck. Wheels spin sand. Light erupts behind them, bright as birth of a star. The mirrored roof implodes. Geyser of magnesium white scorching sky. A shock wave slams convoy. Windows spiderweb, but vehicles careen onward as flaming shards hail across dunes. When dust settles miles away, the night skyline of Alexandria flickers, but holds. No secondaries, no chemical cloud. The archive has not echoed, its heart incinerated before the mirrors could focus the moon. Dawn crawls across the desert, painting the convoy in gold. Emergency crews treat wounds. Paula counts recovered relics over 200. Survivors and families will have something tangible to mourn, and prosecutors will have incontrovertible physical ties across continents. Pavel Horak, sedated but alive, is reshackled in reinforced restraints. The custodian's body is not recovered. Charred DNA fragments suggest presence within the blast radius, but identification will take weeks. Silvia knows well how often monsters dissolve, only to coalesce elsewhere. Yet something in that white inferno felt final. 3 months later, a tribunal in The Hague convicts Pavel Horak of crimes against humanity. Paola's evidence, Joanna's affidavits, Camila's shipping logs, and Marco's smoke-streaked footage leave no refuge in fancy rhetoric. Sentencing is life without parole in an international detention facility. During the verdict, Pavel murmurs that catalogs always outlive custodians. Non-answer. Interpol archives the lunar codex in a vault so deep no cell signal can trespass. Mirror shards gathered from Mariout are fused into a memorial sculpture erected in Florence's Balboli Gardens, an abstract bloom of broken glass hearts that catch Tuscan sunsets, refracting them into harmless, fractured rainbows. Beneath a plaque reads, "For the love that did not fade, for the voices that still echo." On the evening the sculpture is unveiled, Florence breathes easy enough to let music return to lovers' lanes. Market stalls spill laughter into alleys. Candles wink like cautious hope atop trattoria tables. Silvia and Marco walk hand in hand across Ponte Vecchio, no longer hiding from scopes. They lean against the railing, river murmuring below, and finally allow themselves a kiss unshackled from tactical constraint. Across the water, the moon rises fat and innocent, no sigils etched upon it. For the first time in years, Silvia does. not imagined gun barrels in the cypress or purses swinging from iron hooks. Instead, she hears only the chorus of ordinary life, a distant scooter backfiring, a street violinist coaxing Vivaldi, friends clinking glasses in a toast. She knows darkness mutates, that new cults bloom in neglected cracks, but she also knows there will always be guardians ready to meet them. Not archivists of death, but curators of the living heartbeat, the messy, fragile, incandescent heartbeat the Order tried so desperately to silence. Silvia whispers to the moon, "Your mirror is cracked. The light will leak through." Marco squeezes her fingers in agreement. Somewhere deep inside she files this moment, not as a trophy, but as a vow, that the next time shadows gather, someone will remember how to scatter them. Her gaze drifts to the Arno, and the reflections dancing on its surface. Imperfect and quivering, yet relentlessly alive. Then she and Marco turn toward the glow of their city, steps echoing on cobblestones that now sound less like warnings and more like welcome drums for a future finally pried free from the archive of fear, like breathing again after surfacing from a nightmare. This story reminds us that darkness survives only when it goes unchallenged. If you felt your pulse quicken, if you held your breath in those final pages, help keep these echoes alive the right way, by shining light. Give the channel a subscribe, share the story with friends who love a chilling mystery, and ring the bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the shadows behind true events. Until the next tale, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, the monsters only win if we stop looking for them.